Kidney 2020 sustained homeostatic imbalance due to environmental exposure linked to deployment conference, or SHIELD. So thank you again so much for coming. My name is Zena Kirby, and I am Program Manager with the Gulf War Illness Clinical Trials and Treatments Center. And so, led by Dr. Nancy Klimas here at the Institute of Neuroimmune Medicine. So we scheduled this event to coincide with the 29th anniversary to the end of Desert Storm in 1991. In this event, we hope to spread awareness of Gulf War illness and the research we're doing. So with that, first off, I'd just like to recognize Mr. Pounds here. He's going to talk a little bit about what we're doing for veterans here at
Thank you all. Thank you, Dr. Klimas, for this brief introduction, and thank her team for all the wonderful work she does for you guys. I'm a combat veteran as well, so I know all well the struggles that some of you go through. I did a tour in Iraq, a tour in Afghanistan right after 9/11. So one thing we do here, and as she introduced, my name is Leonard Pounds, Vice President of Clinical Operations here at MSU. On top of what Nancy's doing in all of the Gulf War illness work, we also started this year in January a Veterans Access Clinic. And what this clinic does, it's funded by the state, thanks to Governor DeSantis and the legislators. They gave us some funding to start a clinic that would not only see the veterans, but also their dependents and their spouses. And what's unique about this is if you come and you don't have insurance, so you don't have dental insurance, you don't have vision insurance, you don't have medical insurance, we're going to be able to see you 100% free most times. We've also set money aside for things like hearing aids, glasses, stuff like that if you need those as well. So my team is here. We're with Roslyn DeSantis. I've got Tanisha and her team right here in the front. She's the program manager for that project. If you have any questions about that, we'll be more than willing to answer them. We're here to serve you. And as I've been saying time and time again, we're trying to repay a debt that we can never repay. So any little thing we can do for each one of you and your families is the most important thing that we can do. So I thank you. I have to run. I have prior engagements that I have to take care of. But like I said, my team will be here. They'll answer any questions you may have after the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pounds, for that. Additionally, I'd like to thank our research team as well as the other research teams we have here doing research on Gulf War illness. So if everyone who meets that category would go ahead and stand up, we'd just like to take a minute to thank you as well. So yes, work on our team. And also, of course, we'd like to thank our veteran advocates who were kind enough to be here today, as well as for all the work they do propelling our research forward and bettering healthcare for our Gulf War veterans. So if you are one of our veteran advocates, if you would please stand up as well. Thank you so much. And of course, lastly, all the veterans who are here today and on the webcast, I'd just like to thank you for your service. You really make the ultimate sacrifice for our country, so we really appreciate that, and we hope that what we're doing today can improve your lives long term and the lives of future service members. So thank you. All right. So without further ado, I'd like to bring up our two experts on Gulf War illness. This is Dr. Nancy Klimas and Dr. Kim Sullivan. They'll be doing a presentation on the state of Gulf War illness research today. I'll be pulling up their slides here for them, so no worries about that. And I have a clicker for you as well. So if you'd like to sit or stand, that's up to you.
we have done this before, the Kim and Nancy show. And it's because we have this amazing friendship that came from our work in this Gulf War illness field. And it was 5-6 years ago that we both, our group here under Mariana Morris and co-PI with a number of people, Dr. Fletcher in the back and others, were awarded something called the Gulf War Illness Consortia to bring together a group of researchers to try to get at what the cause of Gulf War illness actually is. And at the same time, Kim was awarded a Gulf War Illness Consortia grant in Boston, where she also brought together nationally a large and amazing group of scientists. And if you can imagine how time passes, we had this 4-year window to get a handle on what is Gulf War illness and then try to move it to clinical trials. So we were just awarded 2 great big grants in the past year to develop the Gulf War Illness Clinical Trials Consortia to move that knowledge forward. And B-Brain, which is this amazing resource for scientists to be able to access the blood samples that you so kindly give us and other samples like that, so that you don't have to actually know how to find veterans to be able to do the science. So it allowed us to bring a lot of new people to the field and tremendous science because of the willingness of veterans to participate in the research that lets us create this biorepository that we can share with other investigators. So you see us together a lot because we work really, really well together. We've been doing amazing science for a long time. So I'm going to let you start the show. Okay.
So as Dr. Klima said, we've been working together for many years, and we heard from our veterans very early on when we were doing this, and I've been doing this research for 20 plus years with all of you, that you should be working together, you should be building on your strengths and bringing teams of people who have different expertise together for this difficult disorder, and we've done that. So that's what we've been doing, and in our consortia that we both had, and it's really worked out, and it's really propelled us into the area where we can understand what we think is at the root of the illness, and also how do we develop treatments for it. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about the state of the science and how do we move that knowledge forward. And I think you just got a welcome from the Neuroimmune team here, who's done incredible work and has this incredible facility to be able to do this live streaming too, which is amazing.
And actually, the point of this side, this is this huge team that you just saw some of. We have 62 people. The main thing we do is try to advance the knowledge on this illness. That's this illness and chronic fatigue syndrome are 2 big focus areas. So we absolutely are the largest dedicated group of people in the country trying to solve this problem. It's exciting, and they're just amazing people. I can't get through the list because there is the day.
And as we said, we've got the NOVA team here. We've also got the Boston Gulf War Illness Consortium group, which also then was turned into the Boston Biorepository and Integrative Network for Gulf War Illness, or B-Brain. And it says Boston, but it's across the country. So we have 20 investigators from all across the country, including our NOVA team, which has been really integral, working with us for all of the studies that we've been doing for biomarkers and treatment development. And so in this session, we're going to talk about what is Gulf War illness, what do we know about the cause, what research is going on with our group at the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine and with the QUIC and B-Brain groups at Boston University and nationally, as I mentioned, and how do we move faster, learn more, and move it on to clinical trials and accessible treatments quickly as we can. And so just to give you an overview, Gulf War illness is a chronic multi-symptom disorder that affects about 1/3 of all Gulf War veterans, and that's about 250,000 sick veterans. And I think people don't understand the numbers are really quite staggering of how many of our veterans have this disorder. And so we like to remind folks about that. The causes, we believe it's related to toxicant exposures during the war from a similar class of chemicals called acetylcholinesterase inhibitors. And this included things like pesticides that we use widely during this deployment to protect from insect-borne illnesses, but we didn't know at the time, almost 30 years ago, was that when you combine all of those pesticides, it can cause chronic health effects in people too when you're exposed to them. Our veterans also took anti-nerve gas pills that are in the same class of chemicals, those pyridostigmine bromide or PB pills. They were exposed to low levels of sarin and cyclosarin, at least during one time at the Camisea detonations that we know of, but probably during other times as well. And there were other exposures, things like oil well fires that were lit. 600 oil wells were lit on fire during this deployment, and there was exposure to things like depleted uranium. So quite a lot of unique exposures during this particular deployment that we think are related to the chronic health outcomes that our veterans have been dealing with. We know that our veterans deployed to the Gulf War from August of 90 to July of 91 and times in between, depending on who you were. And the most commonly diagnosed symptom presentation, our veterans have cognitive problems, fatigue, chronic pain, but also respiratory problems, gastrointestinal problems, other issues that they've been dealing with for many years. So this is truly a multi-system disorder that takes a team of different experts working on it together to try and solve it. So what do we know about the cause of the disorder? I think I just mentioned a little bit about that. Retrospective studies and some of the animal studies with some of the preclinical researchers we've been working with have done a lot of work around this, and we believe it's related to neurotoxicants that our veterans were exposed to. As I mentioned, these pesticides and organophosphate sarin and cyclosarin nerve gas agents we believe are, at least in our animal models, related to the chronic inflammation we see in our veterans. And the risk and vulnerability are also explored with studies like genetic predispositions to the disorder, detoxification pathways, and immune function. And the illness persistence is the main focus of the research, so we've been working very hard to try and figure that out in all of our research teams. And then how do we set up treatments to stop this chronic disorder? And most of the VA and CDMRP research portfolios have been focusing on this goal to get discoverable, targeted areas for treatment. And right now there are about 37 treatment trials listed on clinicaltrials.gov. And I used to be the Associate Scientific Director for the RAC Committee many years ago, and at that time we had about 2 clinical treatment trials, not that long ago, about 10 years ago. So the fact that we have 37 now is truly a testament to the researchers working together in this field to really try to develop treatment as fast as we can.
And the advocates finding the money.
Absolutely, and the advocates finding the funds and keeping pushing for the treatment development. So that's actually absolutely key. So what do we know so far about causes of the disorder? We certainly know inflammation seems to be at the root of Gulf War illness, at least one of the areas. Yes, and this is actually a paper that we just published with our group from Mass General Hospital and Harvard University. And we were able to do this advanced PET imaging study with, I think, some of the advocates here who were kind enough to participate in this. And what we saw for the very first time was widespread inflammation in the brains of our Gulf War veterans who have Gulf War illness. So this is something had been thinking could be at the root of the disorder for some time. But now we've actually just shown this in a publication that's freely available on our websites that you can share with your care providers and that you can have for yourselves. But this gives us a real area to now target for treatment, to reduce this inflammation in the brains of our veterans. Okay, and I'm going to pass it on to Dr. Columbus now.
We're going to ping pong a little bit, because what I tried to do when we put this together was merge what we currently know with what we're working on. So when we're talking about, say, inflammation, I was going to mention the kind of work that we're doing in that space. So here at the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine at Nova Southeastern University, which is partnered with the Miami VA, so our institute is an umbrella that crosses the Miami VA and Nova Southeastern University. We gathered that huge list of investigators and other people that are either doing the care team, research team, technical folks, and so on. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and we have this huge research portfolio. This first one is Dr. Nathanson, who is a genomics and genetics expert, and she's using genetic signatures to map out what's going on with the immune system, again, hunting for targetable points, since the immune system is the source of inflammation. Okay. So inflammation is one thing, and when we're talking about inflammation, we're talking about inflammation in the brain and in the body, right? You all feel the inflammation in your body. It's not too hard to say, I've got inflammation. But knowing that you have inflammation in your brain gives us a whole other handle, because the brain is grand central station for managing everything. Sleep, pain signaling. Your whole endocrine system relies on all the signaling going on in the brain, right? Not to mention thinking. So the brain inflammation was a great big discovery, a humongous eureka discovery, okay? So when you're thinking about brain inflammation, you say, well, why would that persist 30 years after my exposure to these neurologic toxic hit that you had in 1990-91? And the answer is, well, you set up some chronic process. And sometimes in the body, there's things that cause vicious cycles. And inflammation is one of them. When you create inflammation in the brain, that you can create oxidative stress in the brain. The cells that are responsible for managing everything overwork, don't have enough stuff they need to clean up oxidative stress, and now you have cells that are literally dying in the brain because of oxidative stress in these cells. And when they die, they create a dead cell. And now the immune system has to clean that mess up, and it's immunogenic, it causes more inflammation. So the vicious cycle, oxidative stress, inflammation, oxidative stress, inflammation. One of the big questions we have right now is, if you just fixed one of those, would it all go away? And the answer is way more complicated than that. But there's one study that's underway, and we're doing a humongous shout out to the world, because we only have a few more months to finish recruiting this study. It's the CoQ10 study. It's an antioxidant study that's the only phase 2 study to date that's shown efficacy in Gulf War illness. The only one. And so the VA invested some millions of dollars to roll out the phase 3 study. If the phase 3 study is successful, we get to give that to veterans on formulary for free. So it's critically important that we finish this study. We've recruited roughly half of the study, 100 people or so, and we only have a few more months to find another 100 people. It's in 4 sites. It's in Minneapolis, Boston, the Bronx, and of course here in Miami. And we're desperately seeking volunteers. So all through here, you're going to hear that phrase, desperately seeking volunteers. When we design studies, it should take us 2 to 3 years to completely finish a study like this. But it always, in every single study, even little bitty phase 2 studies, is taking us 4 to 5 years. And the reason why is we can't find the volunteers. Right now, recruitment is why we are slow. It's not knowledge, science, advance. It's where are the veterans that are willing to participate. I can't grab a question. So if you can please spread the word for us, because we want to get there really fast. And this CoQ10 study could be the first VA-approved intervention, which gives us a whole other platform to educate VA providers. When something rolls out like that, then we have to educate them. And now we have something to educate them about. So that would be really great.
It's either, I think,
Oxidative stress. So there's a lot of different studies going on. One is this CoQ10 study I just mentioned. 4 sites. Deborah Cohen, who's right back there in the corner, is the national coordinator. And we're working really, really hard in the next few months to get this done. There's some other antioxidant studies going on. In fact, when I did the clinicaltrials.gov, I think I counted 13 of them. That's how important it is to know whether or not antioxidants are going to be helpful enough. But the biggest issue with antioxidants is, do they cross the blood-brain barrier? Do they get to the brain? Most of them do not. And so there's a lot of trials trying to figure out whether or not we're going to help people at the level of the brain. The cool thing is there's a new technology to let us know, another imaging technique that's just fairly recent that let us discover the oxidative stress in the brain, Dr. Shungu's group in Cornell. And it's now a tool we can use to measure whether or not you respond to treatment by looking actually at the image in the brain, see if it got there or not. So that's exciting. But there's quite a few studies underway. Dr. Abdullah is here somewhere. Yeah, there you are. She's starting one up. She just got a award letter for Sarasota, so another study in Florida. And then there's some other studies in California, Waco, and Birmingham that are underway right now, in addition to the studies that we have here. As I say, we have several going on here in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. This is one of ours. It's liposomal glutathione and curcumin. This is potent antioxidants, but they also, in our computerized modeling, do something really important to the immune system that needs to be done. So it's hitting 2 buttons, not just one, with these particular antioxidants. So another issue about the Gulf War is toxicants. So the initial hit was toxicants. The question has to be raised, are you continuously exposed to toxicants? And the answer is yeah. You get your house sprayed, you pump gas, you're in a polluted world. So toxicants continue to matter. And there's a very practical advice, like don't spray insecticides on your body. It's not your friend. Don't use toxic things in your house. They're not your friends. I had a veteran who went to visit his brother-in-law after we just published a paper saying that one of the broken pathways, the detoxification pathways that doesn't work, is the one that detoxifies gasoline and diesel and all that. But it also detoxifies the naphthalene, which is mothballs. And he got horrifically ill for years after this 2-week guest bedroom that he stayed in that had in the walls and the panels between the drywall mothballs. So he was in a naphthalene chamber for 2 weeks, and he just absolutely crashed and burned, and it took forever to recover. So continuous exposures to toxicants matter. When you look at how the body detoxifies, they need mitochondria to do that. So many of these studies that are focused on mitochondrial function and mitochondrial improvement, cellular repair, are all trying to help you deal with day-to-day damage that happens from toxicants, ionizing radiation, many things are just in our day-to-day environment. So Dr. Grant, sitting right there, has a study that he's published recently that looked at whether or not DNA repair is happening. And the answer was yes, at a very high rate, which infers there's damage. So if you need to up your pathways to repair DNA, there's something getting dinged in the DNA. So that was important, but it's also nice to know that you can upregulate your repair pathways. You're not that broken. So that's good news. But still, it makes us worry because cancer is a risk when there's DNA damage. And so we tell the providers, watch out for that. Another space that the brain is really important to regulate is everything that there is to know about hormones. And anything way you look at hormones, there's something a little broken there. Testosterone levels run low, the adrenal stress hormones are depleted, blunted responses to biologic stress, all those kinds of things. And this turns out to integrate into our models of the illness, that the hormones matter. And they, of course, are quite different in women and men, so that forced us into gender studies because, well, hell, men and women are different. So it turned out, surprise, science proved that. But in our computational modeling, and Dr. Craddock is here somewhere, our kick-ass lead modeler, it turns out that hormones really play into these models of treatment that we are predicting. We also are using hormones in animal models. Dr. Salguera is here too, and he is using an animal model to test whether or not we can promote repair with growth hormone, a hormone your body uses to promote repair. So he's doing a study in the animal model right now looking at that. I mentioned gender differences. Yes, it matters that men and women are different. And when we're doing our modeling, the predominant number of people that show up for our studies are guys because, hey, that's who was in the military predominantly at the time. But women have a special vulnerability to complex chronic illness, fatigue syndrome, and fibromyalgia, and autoimmunity. So they should actually have a harder time with this, and the models could be quite different. And so they are. And again, Dr. Craddock is doing much of this modeling work, and where the whole team here is helping with that. Now, when we did our models, you'll hear me talk a little bit more about it in a moment, but basically we put people on a bike because we know you don't tolerate exercise, and we measure in a serial set of blood draws, we draw some tubes of blood before you start, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 30, 1 hour, 2 hours, 4 hours next day. We have 9 blood draws over 24 hours. And then we measure every gene that's turned on and off, every cytokine that's expressed, every hormone that's circulating, what are the cells doing, what is their function, everything we know how to measure, we measure in that serial blood draw, which is way too much data. It's more than 1 million bits of data per tube of blood. It's incredibly a lot of data, more than my brain can handle. So Travis Craddock, our computational biology lead, and Gordon Broderick and their teams grab that data, and they use supercomputers and mathematical algorithms to connect the dots. What we want to know is what comes first, second, and third, so we can intervene up front. Instead of treating your symptoms down at the tail of a relapse, we'd like to prevent your relapse, right? So that they can take all that data, model the illness, and do virtual clinical trials. Virtual trials. Hundreds of thousands of different ways to push what button where at what time, and try to put that together into a putative treatment. And you'll see that's been successful for us. We've moved that on from the human data giving us a virtual model to actually curing some mice with this illness. So we got through the animal step of that. And now we're in the human trials. Very exciting time for us. So we're doing this for men. We've got that all mapped out. We're still doing the women study. We still need more women. And one of the problems we have with our recruitment in these studies is not just finding veterans who are ill, but finding veterans who are deployed or even not deployed, but veterans with similar exposures who stayed well. Because we need healthy controls to do these studies. And so in this, you might see that we have 28 or so women that are ill. We have like 2 healthy controls that were veterans. We can't find the women healthy controls. So we really need help in finding and recruiting these studies. So that's this study, the gender study. Dr. Fletcher here doing this study out back in 5 or 6 years ago. And we got funded through the VA to do this study. Dr. Nathanson's using data that she derives from these recruitments, but also she's been very imaginative, trying to find people who have any female blood in their biorepositories to be able to drive a well-powered study that's looking at gender differences at a genetic level. And then Dr. Morris and her group is Dr. Schmidt here, Rodrigo. Anyway, they're creating a female animal model. Right now, all the models for Gulf War illness are male models, and they've been creating a female model using the animals. So back to this model, putting it all together, homeostasis. When you have an illness that affects the immune system, that affects the autonomic nervous system, that affects the endocrine system, and so on, you can't be looking through the blinders of a single specialty. Like, as I'm an immunologist, if I just treated your immune system, I probably couldn't get you better. I have to see the whole thing. So we put together expert teams, and then the glue to our team is the computational modeling group that can glom that all together and actually figure out the balance, the natural network, the homeostatic network of all these systems, and design in these models what is maintaining illness. And even cooler, the concept that perhaps you could predict what might push you into wellness. That's a very exciting concept. This is our moonshot. It's very exciting. We've been working on it for quite some time, and like I say, we finally got it all the way to the human trial. And this is what we're hoping is a curative approach. We hope. But we're also able, using modeling, to tease out subgroups that might need specific treatments. For instance, the autoimmune subgroup. And so we have a study where we're trying to erase the memory of the immune system of autoimmunity through, it's called B-cell depletion, taking the B cells out temporarily and erasing the immune memory of bad things and good, and then having the good come back, recover, after we've erased the memory of the bad. So these are very cool studies. The other kind of subgroups we can tease out are what's the role of PTSD in someone who has Gulf War illness? What's the role of traumatic brain injury in someone that has, veterans don't have one illness. You guys have been through a lot. And an awful lot of people, at least in my clinics, are checking lots of boxes there. Military sexual trauma, holy moly, there's so much of that. And that leads right down the path of PTSD, and so on and so forth. And so, you can't just use the blinders of I'm studying one illness, when in fact the humans that are ill with these illnesses are complicated. So again, there's some studies going on, mainly under Dr. Kronick here, that are trying to tease out all these subgroups. And this is, Travis has a number of studies looking at women, PTSD, comorbid TBI, and so on, and how they influence these models for treatment. So this is our moonshot, the reboot study. We're trying to reboot homeostasis, trying to reboot the way all these systems are interacting. We got news last night, it's 7 o'clock last night, that we finally got DOD approval to start our second reboot study. We have one underway right now at the VA. Yes, indeed. So we have our first reboot study right now in men with Gulf War illness down in the VA. We're still recruiting that study. And it is a month of a drug called Intercept and a week of a drug called mifepristone. We found that in our models we have to do 1-2 punches. You can't just hit one system, we have to hit 2. So it ends up being a total of about 5 weeks of treatment and then a few months of follow-up. And that's a nice study, almost done, but our models didn't tell us exactly how long to treat. So we have a second study we designed with the treatment for with the immune quieting drug, Intercept, which is Enbrel. Goes on for 3 months rather than 1 month, and then the mifepristone bump. So we've got these 2 different phase 1 studies, meaning there's no placebo. Everyone in the study gets the treatment. And from those 2 studies, we'll decide which one goes on to phase 2, and we're already funded for phase 2. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Okay? That means as soon as we know the answer to which of these 2 strategies we should use in a national rollout, a large study, we will be able to use the best of those 2 combinations in a national study. And we hope if we can, it's all about recruitment, if we can rapidly recruit and get these phase 1 studies kicked out this year, that next year we'll be in that phase 2 study. So that would be our most optimistic math, but it's all about finding the veterans who want to be a part. It's very exciting, and there's a lot of people in the room that have been in that study that can talk to you about it. This is the idea of homeostasis being wrong, that all these systems talk to each other. And then in this little mountain with valleys, that wellness is a valley. And when you get a little sick, like the flu, and then you recover, you fall back in, and you always stay in that little well. But if something happened with Gulf War illness where you climbed a mountain and you fell into another well, and you can't get past that down mountain. So now you're a steady state. It's a sick, steady state. But it's a balanced, steady state. And that's the balance is maintaining things. So our goal by using these computational ways of trying to climb the mountain and fall back into the other well, which is basically what the computer's computational system is use Watson kind of computer thinking to, I mean, these guys burn 3 supercomputers for 3 weeks to run their math for these things. I mean, there's tremendous computational science involved in this. And then they predict how you might be able to flip someone back. So that's what we came from to create these studies that I just described. That we're moving forward, and we are a human trial. So this is what we did then. You can see we started up here, put people on the bike, drew a ton of blood, sorry about that. The laboratory people who are well represented here did a tremendous amount of work on that blood, handed all that data off to the guys with the supercomputers. They applied something called chaos theory to all that to try to make all those connections without having to use hypotheses. Tested the theories out in the mouse. We were successful in the mouse. Moved it back, cleaned it up a little bit in the modeling. Moved it all back to a trial design, which is where we are right now, hoping to get to that bottom corner for you in the long run. How's that? That's my slide. I did that slide. I love that slide. So where are we? So this is sort of summarizing the work that's going on here in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. We have the CoQ10 study, national, 4 sites. We have this reboot study and now a second reboot study, recruiting, glutathione versus curcumin, recruiting, cells to therapy. That's a way for us to draw bloods off y'all so that we can do things in the laboratory. We're using the, Christina's in the back, she's running that study. The In that study, we're using cell modeling systems to test our treatments. So we put the cells into culture with multiple drugs and see if combinations of targeted points that we discovered with all that modeling actually make the cells function better. We have the gender studies, a bunch of them. We have the microbiome study. I didn't even touch on that one, but we're doing with Kim and with Dr. Chatterjee. He's the microbiome dude from the university in South Carolina. We're recruiting people to not just give us blood samples, but poop samples so that we can send it off to his laboratory and find out what the microbiome of the gut is doing to help with illness persistence. We have the B-Brain study, which Kim's going to talk a lot about, so I won't jump on that. We have the B-cell depletion study, looking for people with autoimmune overlay. With Gulf War illness, there's some papers, a study that Kim's the principal investigator of that has shown brain autoantibodies that would cause brain inflammation. And so we're looking for people that have those autoantibodies, screening them for the autoantibodies. It's not a commercially available test, it's a research test. But then when we find those people, we'll offer them this clinical trial and see if we can't get rid of the autoantibody production. Finally, there's a big study that's going to kick off in about 6 months called Project In-Depth. It's a VA study where we're hunting for 50 Gulf War vets and 50 Gulf War deployed healthy controls to go to the NIH for 2 weeks and have what they call deep phenotyping. Everything looked at, absolutely everything, in a 2-week in-house stay. It's an extraordinary study. So, and then there's the QuickTick, the Gulf War Illness Clinical Trials Consortia that we are the mothership for nationally here. Aman is here somewhere. Who's there you are in the way back row. Of course, my kids are in the back row. Anyway, she's the national coordinator, national administrator, director of that study. It's just getting off the ground. Its first study is this second reboot study, the one we got approval for it last night, and then it's also managing the B-cell depletion study. So those studies will be occurring locally here at NOVA, rather than the VA. They'll be at NOVA. The rest of our studies are all done at the VA right now, and that's a very exciting time for us to get this clinical trials group off. We had our external advisory board meeting and our investigators meeting just last month. The consortium is also serving as a resource to other investigators to put the infrastructure of their study there. I know that Layla is doing that with her new study in part, where we can offer trial design support, the web-based platforms that people use for assessment, help with recruitment, and even actually implement the study if need be. So everybody that's applying for grants this year or last year is offered that opportunity if they're applying for a clinical trial. This is sort of a summary of what we're going to be doing. That reboot study I just talked about, going from phase 1 to phase 2 is a part of the Trials Consortia. Aman's the PI of a study on an herb called Bacopa that crosses the blood-brain barrier and does both anti-inflammatory and antioxidant things to the brain. That's a very cool study because it's virtual. You don't have to live in any specific area to participate. We're going to be able to do that whole study. It's a great big experiment to see. But there's so many veterans that don't live near a research center and want to participate in research. So it is allowing us to develop a virtual design where you just fill out web-based assessments and we send you the medication or the placebo in the mail and do a lot of telephone-based assessment. So that's pretty cool. And what work will be done locally or drawn locally. And then finally, there's another big antioxidant study where the thicket's still designing to finish out that set of studies. So we talked about B-cell depletion. Now that's our local portfolio. This is a sense of nationally what's been going on. I don't know if you want to do this or should I do this? So this is the DoD portfolio, this CDRMP. Anthony is here. Anthony Hardy every year. If you don't know that your local hero and national hero is this guy, He leads the charge at the Senate and the House to get the funding for this work each and every year from the beginning of time since we were first funded. And I've actually joined him. He is an amazing professional. He knows how to do it, where to be, how to organize. I mean, he's standing right by the chamber, getting the 2 minutes in the hall with the most important vote. It's very, very impressive. He's just about to go do that again on Mondays. Yeah, it's very exciting. But he needs all of you to help. You'll hear more about it on the committee, I mean on the panel coming up. Very exciting stuff. But you can see overall these guys have gotten from Congress $170 million, most of it in the last 10 to 15 years, to be able to move this portfolio forward to clinical trials and try to get you your answers while you're still on this planet and we can intervene in time. So it's really, really important. And so there's a funding cycle was just announced last week, and this is online. The investigators can go online and just find out about the 2020 cycle. But there's a lovely list of things to do. And the other thing about Anthony and all the other advocates, there's so much a part of this process that every single year they meet. In fact, Anthony has chaired for years what's called the integration panel, the people that set the research priority. And over and over and over again, they say, oh yeah, that's interesting, but what we really need is to get to treatment. You know, and they really have pushed the agenda to move this thing to treatment. And I truly appreciate it. I know Bill Watts, you participate, Jimmy, you participate, Denise, of course, you all participate in that, in all these rounds of reviews and whatnot. But that actual leadership role in deciding what the portfolio is really critical to why we're where we are right now. Why I can tell you I'm already funded for a phase 2 study when I haven't finished a phase 1. That was to cut out the 3 years in between the end of one study and the beginning of the next that the normal process would require. It's pretty exciting. The VA also has spent some money over the years, $133 million on their last sheet. Their $13 million was last year, the last year that I could find the data. And they also have been moving to clinical trial. I think the CDRMP has funded most of what you see on the clinicaltrials.gov, but this VA has been funding the big ones, like the phase 3 clinical trial that's underway right now. And so that's exciting. You'll see they do a lot of phase 1 translational stuff, but they do have a mechanism to do large-scale phase 3 trials, and they're using it. So now I just wanted real quick, because everyone, we invited people out there in the world that are doing science to send us what they're doing. And so I'm going to just zip through this one, please. I'm just going to zip through. Yeah. So Wes Ashford is at Palo Alto Risk. The VAs have something called war-related injury and intervention studies. Thank you. Yeah. Anyway, I always mess up what it stands for. But Wes is the PI of the one in Palo Alto. They have a series of studies going on that have to do with either assessing underlying mechanisms or intervening, in this case with non-pharmacologic interventions, complementary interventions. Dr. Adamson is also in Palo Alto doing, again, alternative strategies using TMS treatments for symptom management. Dr. Linda Chow is in San Francisco. She's done one of the biggest imaging studies that's ever been done. And she's also a part of the Big Brain and the consortium of investigators doing collaborative work. And she's got 3 different studies underway. Who's in Madison, Wisconsin, is an exercise physiology and exercise mediated relapse kind of focused guy. And he has a big VA career development award around that. And this is still Dane. He's also looking at autonomic and behavioral interactions after exercise challenge. Layla's your slide. Dr. Abdullah at the Ross Camp and her colleagues have a whole series of preclinical studies that have resulted in what is now clinical studies, a lovely, beautiful path of science to translation to trial. That this is a crowded slide and I'm rushing. I wish I could tell you everything about it, but she's here, she can tell you about it, and that would be excellent. Dr. Shundu's doing the imaging studies of the brain and oxidative stress, which is well underway. He's also doing one in chronic fatigue syndrome using an antioxidant, and he's been able to show at least one antioxidant that clearly crosses the blood-brain barrier and reverses oxidative stress in chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's very exciting. New data hasn't been published yet, but that's why I didn't show the slide. But it's another transformative moment for us in the science of all this. In Boston, Dr. Niles is recruiting a study on novel interventions. Dr. Callahan's here somewhere. There he is, Dr. Callahan. He is the #1 animal modeler. He and Mariana Morris developed the animal models that we use in Gulf War illness, and now that we have them, you can use those to rapidly screen putative interventions. And so that space is his space, and he's really the reason why we were able to move so quickly with our reboot study. And I'm grateful on so many levels for the work that he and his colleagues are doing. I'm transitioning to my colleague to the left.
Okay. Well, as you can see, the field is very, very active and busy with lots of different aspects of the research, which is absolutely fantastic, and especially for some of us who started in this research very, very early and there was not a lot going on. So this is just a wonderful thing to see that we've come this far and that we're excited for where we're going. And so what we're trying to do is create more efficient processes for scientists to progress their research. And one of the ways we're doing that is with our B-Brain study, which is building scientific collaborations across the research community. We're building a large repository to do that. And there's also the Gulf War Illness Veteran Research Clearinghouse, which is working with veterans to move the pace of science. And the GWICTIC, as Dr. Klimas talked about, Clinical Trials Consortium, which is a really unique opportunity to have all these different clinical trials that can go much more quickly than we typically see, as she was saying, from the phase 1 to the phase 2 very quickly, which is really, really an exciting thing for us to be able to move the field forward in our veterans. So I'm going to tell you just briefly a little bit about the Boston Biorepository and Integrative Network for Gulf War Illness, or B-Brain. It's our new repository study. And it's basically providing a resource for future biomarker studies. So what we will be doing is asking 500 Gulf War veterans to participate in our study, some sick and some well. And really we need as many well veterans as we can get in addition to our veterans who are having health problems. Because we want to compare the two, and we want to be as a resource for the research community, so that investigators who say, I have a fantastic idea, but I can't get my hand on any samples, I don't know how to recruit veterans, I don't know how to do this, we can say, okay, we're a resource, come to us, we're going to share those samples with you, and we're going to move this much, much faster in terms of getting to these markers of the illness, and then to be able to then look at those markers pre and post treatment. So that's what the B-Brain is really designed to do, and we've really utilized the whole research community to work with us in that. So we will have 4 study sites around the country recruiting to be able to bring in our veterans to do this as quickly as we can to get these samples. And we're working heavily with Dr. Klimas's group in Miami. We will have a site in San Francisco with Dr. Chow's group, a site in New York, and a site in Boston to do the new study recruitment. And we're doing this because we have a track record of doing this from our Gulf War Illness Consortium from the Boston GWIC. We were able to, what we thought we'd do was have a small little repository that turned out to be one of the most fruitful things we ever did, thanks to the advice of Dr. Klimas, who suggested we think about doing that. Nancy said, why don't you just do a little repository and then we could have more samples as new ideas come up. And it turns out that was the best thing we ever did, because some of the research in inflammatory markers and the imaging I showed you came from having those repository samples and being able to see things like inflammatory markers in the blood from our veterans, or those autoantibodies that Dr. Klimas was talking about. That all came from having these repository samples. So we're very grateful to our veterans who are willing to share those samples for other studies and let you give us a whole lot of your blood and other samples. So we're very grateful for that, and it's really been helping moving the field forward. So that's what B-Brain is set up to do. And we will be able to share samples with other investigators or other studies and translate from the preclinical to the clinical side with our veterans as well. We are collecting all kinds of things from our veterans for the B-Brain, and again, it's for the longitudinal studies that we're already planning from what we did in our GWIC studies, but also to be able to share this with other investigators. So we will be asking for lots of blood again from our veterans. We'll also be asking for saliva for genetic analyses. stool samples for those microbiome, this gut-brain axis issues that may be going on with some of our veterans. And we actually just put out the very first paper showing that we do think that's happening in some of our veterans, and that's then an area that we can target for treatment. So we'll be asking for those samples from our veterans. And so everything we're asking for is for a very good reason, because we think there's a key a marker that may be related to some of these biomarkers that we're asking you for. We will also ask for exposure outcomes from you, questions about exposures our veterans may have had, so that we can see what may be at the root of the illness as well. We will be looking at cognitive outcomes, brain imaging from our veterans. As I mentioned, the first paper of neuroinflammation in our veterans was just published. We're very, very excited about that because we think that gives us an objective marker of illness. Our veterans for a long time have reported self-report of your symptoms, but getting an objective marker that we can see on brain imaging or blood tests is really where we want to go. In the first year of our B-Brain study, engage our veteran advocates, and a lot of you in this room were those veteran advocates that have really helped us get off the ground and get veterans signed up to participate in our study. So we thank you for that and hope we can continue to do that. We worked with Dr. Klimas' group to do common data elements for the research field. What does that mean? If you use the same tests across all different studies and you're doing treatment trials, we can then compare the trials apples to apples to say, does it work? If everybody uses a different test to measure your studies, we're comparing apples to oranges and we don't know what's most effective. So we set up this common data elements where we ask researchers across the field to use the same tests that we know are sensitive in our Gulf War veterans who have health problems. So we worked very hard to set that up with the DoD and others, which is now on their website, and we would like all investigators to use these same common data elements. We are using centralized recruitment and outreach efforts across our studies so that we can make sure that we're targeting veterans, but not over-targeting our veterans as well, to come in and do our studies. And a big part of the B-Brain is asking you once for these samples so that we can share it across multiple studies. So we're thankful for that too. And we know our advocates like Denise and others have worked really hard to get veterans to come in and do this for us. And so we are thankful for those efforts, and we want to make sure that you know that we're using this for as many studies as we can. We are working very hard. As you can imagine, a study that has 10 study sites around the country takes a lot of work to get institutional approvals. So we're working really hard to get all those approvals in place. But as you can see, we have many investigators from across the country that have worked really hard to get those approvals in place. So not only can we get the new samples from our veterans to share for other studies, but from prior studies, they're willing to share them for the B-Brain repository as well. So that's very, very important. So things like cerebrospinal fluid, which is something that we don't want to ask our veterans to do a whole lot, take a lumbar puncture. We have our investigators who are willing to share those samples for these key biomarker studies. So we're working really hard to get all those approvals so we can then get those markers and do those studies without asking you to come back in for those types of examinations again. So just so you know that you did this once, it's going to be used for multiple studies, so we thank you for that. And so now we're working really hard to do outreach efforts to our veteran advocates and to ask our veterans who are out there to please consider participating in our studies. And so we've been trying to go to as many meetings as we can, and I'm looking at Denise, who's been just a powerhouse in trying to get veterans recruited for us, and we're very thankful for that. And attending meetings with us and for us to advocate for getting veterans to come and participate in our studies. So that includes today as well as other meetings. The 7th Corps has been tremendously supportive of us as well, and we're thankful for them too. We also have been trying to get out as many media stories about our veterans as we can, and we were fortunate enough to have a nice story at Veterans Day about the B-Brain kickoff. But also, it turns out we had many veterans in the Boston University system who were actually staff members and faculty members as well. When we looked and realized there were so many Gulf War veterans among us that we didn't even realize even at Boston University. So that was a really nice story to get out there that a lot of people don't realize how many veterans you're working with every day that may be having health issues. So that was really nice. So please take a look at that one and share it with your colleagues. I mentioned a little bit about the common data elements already, so we've been working really hard to make sure everybody's using the same tests with our veterans so that we can compare across studies appropriately and properly. That was a real problem in the early days of the research, and so we corrected that issue now. We've been working hard to then publish that information. So this is a paper that we did with Dr. Craddock's group, Travis, and so this was a really nice way to get the common data elements out there so that veterans and their care providers can see that, to be using the tests, this was for cognitive assessments, that we know we're sensitive in our veterans, and using the right tests when they come in clinically or for research purposes. So we'll continue to do that. So keep an eye on our social media and our Facebook pages. We're putting up those papers as soon as we have them available. We're also working hard to set up case criteria as well. So that's something we've been thinking about and working on to make sure that people are using the same case criteria. How do you determine who has Gulf War illness and who doesn't? So keep your eyes open for that too. We've been trying to publish our information and research, disseminate this research as widely as we can. And I know Dr. Klimas' group has done this, and we put everything that we publish up on our social media, and it's freely available. We pay to have it freely available for our veterans and their care providers to download these publications as soon as they're out, so that we're trying to get it translated as fast as we can. So please keep an eye on our social media so you can see that and go up and get any of this information. Here's our website for the B-Brain. The bottom there, you can take a look. And so this is for veterans who are interested in participating. There's information there. There's also information for investigators who want to access the samples, and a fairly simple request form. So you can go in and request the information. It goes to our steering committee just to make sure that someone else hasn't already requested particular samples for a particular reason. And then we approve it and we share those samples. So for a very long time in the research community for Gulf War illness, there were groups who had samples, but they never shared them because they were afraid that once they used them up, that's it, they'd be gone, and there wouldn't be those samples for additional studies. We are getting as many samples as we can, so we are sharing samples. So just so you know that if you're willing to share your samples with us, we're sharing them with the research community. Okay.
So I heard a lecture from a biorepository guru, and he said, a really good biorepository is an empty biorepository. That is not really a bank. You're not supposed to save it. You're supposed to give it away. And that is very true. And Kim's biorepository has brought at least 20 new investigators to the field because she's been so willing to share from this biorepository and encourage people to come in. She's also been fantastic at bringing young investigators into the field. So I really think it's a wonderful thing. We actually hold the biorepository here at NOVA, in our laboratory. He's the bank, and Kim's the PI of the project that lets it go away again. It's a busy space. This is the final little bit of the talk, but some of you have asked us, and this is such an important question, how can I get involved in research? How can I find out what's going on? Where do I go to sign up? On the investigator's side, there's how do I find these veterans? One of the biggest problems we have with Gulf War illness is to this very day, there's not an ICD-9 or 10 code. So we can't just go in the medical record and find you. You're not there. It's just amazing. In a VA medical record, I can't look for Gulf War illness and say, how many Gulf War veterans are in my hospital? There's no way to find that out. I can tell you how many asthmatics, but I can't tell you how many Gulf War veterans. To this day, big, big problem. So, and then we had this big problem about rules. The VA loves to do work behind its own firewall, and it's one of the most difficult firewalls to work behind. The DOD has its own privacy review that adds a layer to a layer that's already happened at the university. So we thought, well, how can we just create an independent entity where veterans could go and sign up for studies or learn about studies or be in a registry of sorts that said, hey, if a study comes up, I'm eligible, tell me about it. And so we asked for private donations, so we didn't have to rely on any federal money. And then we used the NOVA, this university's IRB, the Institutional Review Panel, that protects your privacy and makes sure that we're keeping this information in a privacy compliant server, the same server that the medical records actually kept on, actually. And so we've created this this clearinghouse space where veterans can go sign up and we can contact you about research. Liz, are you back there somewhere? So the light's right in my eyes. Liz Baldwin's in charge of this project. She's put it all together. It's on a very simple platform called RedCap. It's a web-based survey. You go into this space, say, I'm interested, I give you permission to recontact me if, and then you have to tell us what you're willing to let us recontact you about, an event, research, or whatnot. So there's a space where you tell us what we're allowed to talk to you about. But many of you know about this meeting today because you already did this. So this is this clearinghouse space. We want to open it up so the investigators in the whole country can come to us and say, hey, I got a study in Madison. Do you have people in Wisconsin that are in your registry? And then we could send out to the Wisconsin vets information about this cool study in Wisconsin, that kind of thing. So that's what's going on. And it's neat because it allows us, because you fill out a survey of your symptoms, to define whether or not you meet the criteria of a specific study. We don't have to pester people who don't. So we can go and say, okay, you seem to meet the criteria for this study, and hey, you're in the right place for this study. Here's the information about this study. So for you, it's a way to go in and let us know you're willing and able. And for us, it's a way to make this a much more efficient process. And I said this once, I'm going to say it again. Cut 2 to 3 years off of every study that's underway because we could find you. Okay? Recruitment is our slowest step of every single thing we're doing. You can't find a single study in Gulf War illness that was done on time, ever, because it's so hard to find the subjects. So we're thinking, well, this could be the tool. And if we take it personally into our institute's domain, we don't have to worry so much about getting behind the VA firewall or going through the DoD HARPO process, but rather, which is a private human subjects process, use our institutional privacy process and then have this much more easy space to work in to try to find you all to get into studies and tell you about the results of studies and so on. And so while it's a study in its own right, because it's asking you a lot of questions about your health, it's data, and when there's data, by God, we're doing a study. We're going to learn about you, and we'll publish those results with your permission, because you have to give us permission as you go through this process. But we also use it as a recruitment tool and a way to get the word out about what work that's going on. So if you sign up on this, you go on the survey, the very first page says, hey, I'm willing to be in this study, I'm willing to be recontacted for this, that, or the other thing, and actually how you'd like to be recontacted, by email, by phone, or whatever. So you tell us about what your desires are. And then there's this survey that's just about your symptoms and illness severity. It takes about 30 minutes to do. So, I'm sorry, so far we've had 1,300 people pop on this website. We just put it up 6 months ago. We've got, of those, 790 that actually completed the 30-minute survey. Of those surveys, so almost all of these people are actually people who are ill. 98% of those people have symptoms, and 724, that's a lot, meet the main case definitions we use in research. So that's exciting. I mean, I didn't have these 724 people in any kind of way accessible to any kind of science. Very exciting time for us to be able to use this tool. And then it's interesting who's in there, because this is all about thought leaders. We have 438 people in the South. Well, that's us. That kind of makes sense that you can pick up off Florida, we pushed it out through our clinical space and all that. But the 191 people in the Midwest, we don't have them. You know, where'd they come from? Somebody in the Midwest Facebooked and did whatever to their circle of friends, to their circle of friends, to their circle of friends, and then pushed it out. Very, very cool, and so on. So very nice to see that. Northeast, we're low, 87 people in the Northeast, and we could do a whole lot better up there in Boston and Bronx, where we have some major studies going on. So we got to get the word out. So that's exciting, though, that we have these people at all. And this is kind of an example. Have you been diagnosed or not? Interesting. Of those 790 people I said were sick, only 228 have a diagnosis of Gulf War illness. That means a really important thing. Like 1 person in 4 doesn't know they have this illness. That's something. That's a big deal. That's us, the healthcare providers, not knowing how to make diagnoses and not telling you what you got. Were you in good health before you were in this service? And there'll be first questions about when did you get ill, that kind of thing. Oops. So, the bottom line, it's great, it's a tool, it's easy, you can use it, gives us a way to get a hold of you, to tell you what, like this conference, that kind of thing, and specifically inform you about studies that are coming down the line. Gives the investigators nationally, not just our group, a way to access potential study subjects, very exciting. But bottom line, the single best way to get to participate in science is to sign up on this platform. We will share it, with your permission, of course. And so, this is the end, it's cool. So we're rolling out the platform, and we're begging you to help us. So we really need, in fact, initially what I'd hoped was that I would get an advocacy group to take charge of this. But then we decided just to go ahead and do it. But we'd love to partner with patient advocate groups and really make this successful. So thank you. There it is. It's on our website. Just go NOVA Gulf War Illness Survey. You'll find it.
We have flyers right outside as well. They're both over.
The phone number's in here a lot in this slide deck. By the way, this is being videoed. It'll be uploaded to the web. You'll be able to go back and look at this lecture if you care to look at it again. You can share it with friends. We're streaming right now. I don't know how many people are streaming, but we anticipate that this will be a very well. There are a lot of people out there watching right now, watching you, and so on. And we're going to take a couple questions right now, then we're going to go to break, and then the Veterans Advocate panel is going to jump up here and do their thing. Yeah, Bill. So we're streaming, so actually you need a microphone to be able to ask a question.
The microphones for questions are just on either side of the aisle.
Oh, perfect.
And please, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas, Dr. Sullivan. My name is Bill Watts, Gulf War veteran who served with the 1st Cavalry Division. I'm also a veteran advocate. I actually have a two-part question and a comment. The primary care and the CMP exam doctors could be of great help in recruiting if they knew what they were looking for. So, on to my question. A lot of the Gulf War veterans feel left out. Doctors don't understand their needs and frankly don't know how to treat the 1991 Gulf War veterans. Have you tried to set up any type of training locally to the doctors in your areas? Part one. Part two, Gulf War veterans' parents of children have actually been creating groups, one such as Gulf War Babies and Parents United, because they're highly concerned about issues being passed on to their children. Are you planning any type of research in the near future?
So those are two different questions. I'm going to answer the second one first because when we get this registry together, we have a great, I would like to get 10,000 or more veterans in that platform. Because what we're allowed to do with that, with IRB review and all the usual things we have to do, is ask more questions. So if we had 10,000 Gulf War veterans, we could do a survey, a little short, sweet survey about the health of their children and have a very targeted way of answering that second question. There are other research things going on out there that, in fact, there's a great big study that we participated in almost 20 years ago where we brought Gulf War vets in, I think 8,000 Gulf War vets, their spouse, their children, and did assessments. In that we found the Gulf War vets were at higher risk for, surprise, surprise, Gulf War illness, fibromyalgia and all the things that are associated with Gulf War illness. The spouses were a little more at risk for chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia, but the children in that study did not have a higher incidence of anything. And there was 8,000 vets in their families, a pretty good sample size. But the real way, and it could be something that happens later in life, 20 years ago, those were young kids. So that needs to be done better. Now, you asked about training local docs. We do so much training here. It's a very, very impressive effort. And in fact, we have a fellowship program in environmental medicine that we just started this past year. Dr. Bested's here. She's the chair of integrative medicine, very much focused on this illness and training the next generation of doctors. We do in-services and seminars and lectures at the VA and all around town. We do just a lot of it. It's still, in the end, the real way to reach doctors is to have an approved treatment for the patient. Always. I always said the day that we cure fix chronic fatigue syndrome, which is another focus area, is the day there's a pharmaceutical company and they send that army of drug reps into all the offices in the whole wide world, like they did for fibromyalgia and Cymbalta, you know? So that's when doctors say, hey, it's not in their head, it's real, oh my God, there's a drug, and now I know what to do. And doctors really do want to know what to do. So having treatment guidelines is very helpful. And the only way to do that is to evidence-base what we're doing. Do these studies, do these trials, prove they work, and then create the guidelines that are needed so that we can train people up properly. And many of you get their care here at NOVA. That's because the VA has a community care program. When there's not enough providers at the VA, they transfer them to experts in the community, and we are, at NOVA, the experts in the community, the only ones that I'm aware of for Gulf War illness, I can tell you that, chronic fatigue syndrome and so on, and that program is expanding because of need, and because right now I'm still the only doctor down at the Miami VA that sees any patients through this illness, so it's a little overwhelming. So anyway, that's it. I think that answers the question. Go ahead, Mrs. Christie.
Thank you for those questions, and I just wanted to also mention that the National Academy of Science put out a report on reproductive health in Gulf War veterans' children, saying there really wasn't enough having been done so far to date, with the exception of the report that Dr. Klein has mentioned from that study. So they actually have put out a call for a health risk assessment with the children of Gulf War veterans, and the Department of Defense is working on that now to try and develop that. And colleagues at Boston University that I have who are working in reproductive health are actually associated with that and talking with them about developing that. So that's coming down the line, just so you know, and hopefully soon. We'll have some better answers. Unfortunately, that's something I get a lot of questions from veterans, and I always have to say we just don't know enough about that. So hopefully we'll know a lot more about that soon. The other question, the practitioners, I think is a very good point. And we've just been funded, just a week ago, I think we heard about a grant that we put in to look at training for practitioners who treat Gulf War veterans. And we've just gotten word that that's going to be funded. So we're going to have training vignettes and some little videos for VA clinicians, but also outside of VA. So there's a lot of folks here at NOVA and other places who are treating Gulf War veterans and don't really know enough or know how to do that. So we're setting that up now. So hopefully in the next year or so we'll have that vignette set up, and there'll be some training, and hopefully the care providers will know a lot more about how to treat Gulf War veterans. So thank you for those very, very good questions.
My stepfather over there was a Gulf War veteran, and I've been doing some research lately on the effects of fasting, the anti-inflammatory functions of fasting in the brain at least. I know that if you fast for a day or more, autophagy takes place in the brain, and that's basically, I guess, the cleanup of damaged cells, dead cells in the brain. Is that something that is shown promise, or is that something that's been looked at?
So it's a really great question, and I know that you all see the clinicians panel at the end of this program this morning, and most assuredly in the integrative medicine model, fasting is a common strategy to try to create an anti-inflammatory process and change actually metabolic rate as well. So two different things that fasting can do. So it's a good idea. There is, I think, one study underway, I'm trying to remember who's doing it, it's national, that's using different nutritional approaches, and I think fasting is one of their things on their list that's underway. I think I saw it on clinicaltrials.gov. when I was counting studies for you on that slide. So I think it's a great idea. With some, we end it in a clinically practical way better. Obviously, anything you do that involves food or not food is going to change the microbiome. That's really an important point. But I think it's a very interesting. A 3-day fast is a difficult fast. It's something you couldn't do very regularly, successfully in most. You need a very determined person. You know, so anyway, thank you very much.
So thank you guys so much for coming in and
Yeah,
sharing
I'm so
your
forgiveness.
experiences. This is really kind of the star to the show today for me, at least. But I've heard about the research, and of course, that's that. So for this portion, we're going to hear from our 4 Gulf War veterans about their experiences with Gulf War illness research, and how they've been dealing with that, and their advice to you. So first off, we have Jimmy. Jimmy Arocho is a Sergeant First Class, retired from the Gulf War. He's going to be our moderator. He's worked with our team as a patient advocate for years, and he's really been indispensable. So Jimmy, would you like to say anything? Great. All right, so we also have Anthony Hardy. As Dr. Klimas mentioned, he's just super influential in Gulf War advocacy, so thank you so much for joining us today. So he is part of the Gulf War Illness Research Program, congressionally directed medical research programs, and then in addition, we also have Bill Watts, who has worked very closely with our Miami team in helping generate awareness of our group, as well as his own efforts in patient advocacy, as well as David Patterson from Roscamp, who is the clinic manager with Gulf War Illness Research Programs there. So in addition to his expertise as a veteran, he will kind of share his experience working in research too. So without further ado, take it away, Jimmy.
Thank you, Zena. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for coming. What I'd like to do during my short time up here is unpackage a little bit of what you heard this morning. And what you heard is very deep science. I look at that science as the leading edge of the scientists working on the solutions that are going to facilitate quality of life and our future moving forward. What I'd like to do is speak directly to the veteran in more of a tactical way. Jimmy, what should I be focused on, and what can I do as soon as I walk out those doors in the back? I want to thank, of course, Dr. Klimas for giving me the opportunity. She's given me the opportunity to integrate the veteran consumer side of it. Just what's our experience? We were the ones that were on the ground. We were there, and then we brought that back. Also want to thank Aman Chima. She is the program director. That was Zena Kirby. She is the program manager. And she also has a team, Sarah Mohimian. She is a research associate. I'm also a research associate. So thank you. These are the professionals that saw to sharing the science and then opening the door to Gulf War veterans to come up here and, again, unpackage and make that connection. I would be remiss not to recognize, but I want to recognize a few folks that I have not met yet. Is the Dietrich family, Tom? Thank you, Tom, Mary, and Bren. Gulf War veterans family came up from Central Florida, where I also live. Thank you for your advocacy. I'm recognizing directly the advocates that are at this. This is familial advocacy, grassroots advocacy for Gulf War illness. I was contacted directly by the parents. Grassroots advocacy, and I'm going to challenge you, continue on. Hit those immediate goals, and I'll talk about goals right up front, but continue your advocacy. Thank you for being here. Also, Mark is he is a hall technician, second class, Navy. Welcome, shipmate. These are advocates in the community, extremely powerful, vocal advocates. He has an interesting podcast on a platform named Anchor. He has a number of interviews, very well done. I've listened to most of your interviews, by the way. very well-focused naval professional. And I would encourage for you, please stand up or show folks your hand so they know who you are. Very powerful advocate, Gulf War veteran, Navy. Navy. I also chair a committee of veteran advocates that are across the nation. They're actually, Denise is out of Colorado. Marilyn Harris, she's not here, she's in Houston. Bo Marshall, Bo, please stand up. Advocate. North Florida. He's the part of the group that unpackages this message so that we veterans have a tactical way of moving forward with this guidance. And did I miss anybody on that committee?
We could have Lieutenant Colonel Sadler next to Bo stand up.
Thank you. Recognize. Appreciate that. Any other advocates? Anybody else working to advocate for Gulf War illness that I've missed? Thank you. I also...
May we, the veterans that are not active, I'd like them to stand up so that we can get with them individually and encourage them to step out and help us. So if we could have them that are here in the audience.
Let's start first off with any Gulf War veterans in the audience. Will you please stand up? Any other veterans? Any other? Thank you. You're an advocate, sir. If you didn't know, you're an advocate now, especially those that serve. Thank you. I already got the thumbs up, so I deeply appreciate that. Very, very important. Very important to advocate. I believe that Dr. Klimas made it extremely clear that just getting the word out is it is the paramount challenge. We've just got to continue to do that. We've got to get better at doing that. And we've got to, if you will, we've got to curtail that process so it's an easier process. Because imagine if I went to engage with a veteran and I then started with an elevated conversation like Nancy just did, like Dr. Klimas said, explain to you the science from top to bottom. I would need a very tall elevator to make that reach. It can't be that long. It has to be a more what, when, where, how, why. Thank you, Jimmy, and then move on. So we're gonna aim to that. We're gonna aim strictly to having an understanding where we can execute on. Thank you again to Dr. Klimas for giving me the opportunity to help feed back to the research through the steps that we have to take as veterans. And I will say right up front, we as veterans have to yield to a few organizations that also make it happen. We've been saying the VA, it's not just the VA, it's the Veteran Health Administration, the VHA, and the VBA, the Veterans Benefits Administration. Yes. These are administrations, I'm saying correctly, these are administrations. We need them because we turn to the VA hospitals for clinical care. Well, when we're not doing research, we have to be cared for on a regular basis. And for those that are experiencing hardships, we need to turn to the VBA for compensation and pension benefits. It's also part of the mix. It has been 29 years. We're very excited about the discussion of research. However, it has been 29 years. That is a long time. Long, long time. The best that I can do historically is I look to the brothers that preceded us in the Vietnam War. It's been 50 years for them to arrive at the 14 presumptives that they have just achieved today. And I think, wow, this is going to be a long, long road. But we're going to shorten it. Like Dr. Klimas says, we're going to get to that business, then we're going to get to the business of talking about our trajectory, the veteran trajectory. I also want to bring attention to another guest, Gregory Ellis. He's actually a Veterans Claims Examiner, sir. You mind taking a... Thank you. Veterans Claims Examiner. He's a Southern Region. He does outreach coordination. He is a representative. and he can extend an arm. He's that dotted line to those folks, these officials, that I strive to share this story so that they can facilitate. He's at the Veteran Service Officer level. He's actually a VCE, which is Veterans Claim Examiner, but he's still at that level that are mass communicating. So if I step out in the hallway and have a 30-minute conversation with you, then that's 30 minutes spent between you and I. Whereas these veteran service officers, they have lobbies full of veterans that walk through the door. They walk through the door with questions. And I tell you just very directly what the questions are. And many of you that have spoken to me in the past can relate to this. But there's 3 things that a veteran could do. And if you're not doing this, please have a discussion with either myself or any of the panel members. 3 things. Walk into your VA clinic and you are connecting with what is known as your patient-aligned care team. First off, first thing that we need to do is make sure that we're getting health care. Flat out. Flat out. Get the health care. That is the first thing. If you're not a member of the VA, then please, we can help you with that onboarding. There's a small onboarding process, ID card, identify with the VA that you are a veteran. You are a veteran, and what you're experiencing is some health-related issues that may be attributable to my deployment in the Persian Gulf, 1990, 1991, Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I'm going to be very deliberate about that. Very deliberate about that. You have to fully identify 1990, 1991 Gulf War. Well, Jimmy, why do I have to be so deliberate? The Gulf War continues to this day. The Gulf War is ongoing. If you don't differentiate that you are a veteran of the first Gulf War, they may miss that. That primary team, that patient-aligned care team, it may go right over their head. You have to identify. So veterans, when you walk in there, tell them, I have concerns. Please take me to the next level. Dr. Klimas tells me very kindly. She says, we will follow the science. Clinicians follow the science. I don't know what's going on with my body. You don't know what's going on with your body, but these people that are in the building, they're going to help me get there. Number 2, should there be identified that there are challenges with post-deployment, actually learned about her reading Institute of Medicine journals, frustrated with what I was experiencing health-wise, my primary care team wasn't helping me. They treated my complaint as a mental health issue, and it was treated that way, as a mental health issue, for 25 years, until I connected with research. I made contact with Dr. Klimas and her team. She was having a similar session in Miami. So I said, I'm going to jump in the car. I live in Orlando, and I still live in Orlando. I work remotely on this initiative. I'm going to jump in the car, I'm going to drive to Miami, and I'll tell you, I'll be very honest, I was going to unload on her. What does this doctor think? You know, it's been 25 years, and I'm dealing with some problems. You know what I met? I met a kind, caring, committed professional. That's what I met. Yes. That speaks for itself. That speaks for itself. Very powerful. I was indebted to her. So I said, I'm going to continue to advocate for you. And I took what I learned about what was going on with my body, and I went right back to Orlando to my patient-aligned care team, my primary care provider, and I said, let me share a couple things with you. This is what I'm learning. Oh, really? Where'd you learn that, Jimmy? Some doctor named Dr. Klimas. She's in Miami. I'm going to go ahead and get you over here to specialty care. My neurologist, rheumatology, gastrointestinal, and pulmonary doctors, within a short order, diagnosed me with Gulf War illness. Flat out. Flat out. Spun the display around and said, this is what's going on. It took a long time to get there, and it was just seems like, really, it took this. So how do I unpackage that for you? So again, if you have not seen that patient-aligned care team at your VA, we're in Vision 8, that's Veteran Integrated Service Network here in Florida. There's 7 hospitals throughout the state of Florida, 60 community-based outpatient clinics. Get in there, get established if you're not. And then those that are in there, but just have made it to the primary care, get that specialty care referral. How do I get that specialty care referral? With these complaints. I was in the Persian Gulf 1990, 1991 Gulf War, and I have some health-related conditions that I consider possibly attributable to my deployment. That specialty care. Once you're in that, settled into that care, are continuously seeing those doctors, developing the picture, then I would suggest to you, think about us, think about the researchers, think about the advocates, come back to us then. But get yourself seen up front and then double back for the researchers. We're going to be here. The water is warm, just like the Gulf Stream that flows across the east. The water's warm. Come on in. Come on in, please. Please. I mean, I'll challenge you with that. Very, very important component of the process. So see the VA doctor, get that referral, those specialty care referrals, and then think about us here in research. Very, very powerful set of steps. And if you're challenged with that process, and I realize it is challenging, there's a lot of gatekeeping going on, some hurdles that are there. We can help you getting past those. It's just more of a communications challenge, I'll be honest with you. It's about communicating and communicating effectively. It's about, again, identifying what war you're associated with and how to mitigate that and get through those channels and get to what you're looking for. I think moving forward, what I'll do is I will continue to introduce the members, and then afterwards, once we all sit down, if then we can ask questions. Is that cool? Yeah. So formulate them, scratch them on the back of your fingernails, and then develop a nice, big, concise picture of what we have to share with you, and then hit us with the mojo, hit us with what you got. All right? Does that sound good?
Yes.
Thank you, thank you. Leads the definition of the presumptives that we bring to the primary care team and to the specialty care team. In the Veterans Administration today, so the Veterans Administration is way behind the leading edge of what the researchers are discovering. We're way behind it. That is the research plan, and that is the trajectory. Behind that are chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, and a functional gastrointestinal issues like IBS, and then some memory issues. Those are the presumptives. That's what we have today. That examiner, he's tied by his bylaws to respond to presumptives. And if that term is new to you, please roadblock me, and we'll go through the presumptives real quickly. But the presumptives is what we get. So what's in it for me, Jimmy? You're up here, it's been 29 years and you were in the military, big deal. You were in the Gulf War, big deal. The presumptives is what's driving our motivation. That's helping with the hardships. That's helping with the care. For that veteran, if he's not retired, he may not have an open door. But all of us that are veterans or Gulf War veterans do have an open door at the VA, and we do have the opportunity to receive a free Gulf War health exam, which includes the burn pit registry and the Gulf War illness registries. If those are new to you as well, please roll up. Anthony, please, sir. Anthony Hardy.
And I'm going to just speak right from here. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. So my name is Anthony Hardy. I live here in Florida as well. I live over on the other coast. Originally from Wisconsin. Served 7.5 years in the U.S. Army. My health issues began while I was still in the Gulf in 1991. After going through an Iraqi bunker complex, it had the characteristic odors of some chemical warfare agents that we didn't know of at the time. Smelled like onions or garlic, characteristic odor of mustard, and geraniums. My grandmother grew in her garden, and I was thinking of as I was going through these bunkers, and how oddly it smells like those flowers in my grandmother's garden. And it smells like the characteristic odor of bluesite. But we had lots of toxic exposures during the Gulf War. So the periodicity we broke my pills that many of us took, anthrax vaccinations and other vaccinations that the troops took. the ongoing oil well fires that continue to burn for long after they came home, depleted uranium, and all sorts of exposures. And for veterans out there that are, I want to especially acknowledge all of the veterans out there that are listening and are watching and are going to be watching probably in the future because this is being recorded. So thank you for joining us, those that are here today, and if you're watching a little bit later, really glad that you're tuning in, and we are extremely mindful of you and grateful for the technology that allows us to talk directly to you as well. Those health issues were fairly significant at the time. I recall laying face down on my cot and coughing up black chunks of what looked like lung tissue at the time. A lot of us developed chronic coughs, some perhaps not as severe as that, but all sorts of issues, skin issues, fatigue issues, which were unusual. I turned the ripe old age of 23 during the Gulf War, and a lot of troops were even younger, 17 and 18-year-old troops, all the way up to 20s, 30s, 40s. But all of us were in very good physical condition, or we wouldn't have been there. And many of us developed our symptoms while we were still in the Gulf, and continued to get worse thereafter. Coming back home, I still had a couple of years on active duty and had some other deployments, and noted that I was slowing down. My cough never stopped. Continues until today. All sorts of other health issues as well. So I'm not unusual in that sense at all, but what we've learned since is that these health issues affect about 1 in 3 of us veterans. So it's pretty significant. One of my earliest experiences with healthcare with Gulf War illness was to be a important of what was to come, and that was going to the Troop Medical Clinic at Fort Bragg. And my cough that wouldn't go away, the fatigue was just continuing to get worse. I was in the special operations community, and so was not one to regularly go to the TMC to seek healthcare. And hearing the screener out in the hallway talking to the doctor and saying, "This is another one of those Gulf War vets who thinks he's sick." That kind of treatment continued for all of us into the VA, and for some, regrettably, it still continues today, which is what is bringing all of us here today as well, because some of us have health issues that are unrelenting, and others have had those that we care about, and the many that are helping to try and solve these issues. One of the first times that I testified before Congress as an advocate, I said a phrase that went something along the lines of, when you're going to see healthcare, being seen isn't the same as being treated. And we recognized as advocates early on, some of us, Denise, I got to know back in, I got involved late. I suppose you would say I didn't get involved, I didn't get out of the military until December of 1993, and I got involved in August of 1995. Denise, Paul Sullivan, Charles Miles, and others were already advocates at the time. And so testifying before Congress and making that statement really meant to me that we came to understand that the solutions to what we needed weren't when we went to see the doctor because they didn't know what to do with us. This was a condition that was something that they simply didn't know what to do for us, and they could try and treat symptoms. When you have a headache, well, let's see what we can do for that. You have skin issues, let's see what we can do for that. You have respiratory issues, well, let's dig into it and see what we can do for that. But often those tests weren't showing up anything at all. But it's sort of like looking, if you're looking for a bacteria that's causing, use an example that's out there today. People are getting sick from this disease called coronavirus. And if you're looking to identify what's coronavirus, well, if I had coronavirus and you're looking at me, you can probably see that I have a fever, and you can see that I have all kinds of symptoms. But if you don't have a microscope and if you don't have a specific technology, you're going to have no idea that it's being caused by this little microscopic bug that's there. And so the tools that were being used in the clinic were simply just not precise enough, not refined enough to be able to look to try and figure out what was happening with us local veterans. And so as early advocates, we sought to try and change the course of VA to identify, first of all, it was a 5-point mission. First of all, an investigation, full-fledged, to determine what we might have been exposed to. The second, after investigation, was research, evidence-based research in order to identify treatments that might help to ameliorate, to help us to with conditions that may have resulted from those exposures. The third was treatment. Treatment based on evidence in order to give us evidence-based treatments to help our health conditions that resulted from those exposures. Fourth was compensation for those that were left disabled by their health conditions. And then fifth was never again should we let what happens in 1991 Gulf War veterans happen to another generation. That 5-point plan continued to guide us forward. And I've got a little time limit I just want to highlight because it's now going on 30 years since the war. And I hear often from veterans, well, why is it taking so long? Why haven't we got it yet? Well, all this money's been spent on research and what happened. And so I just want to trace a very brief timeline. 1991, the Gulf War. 1994, 3 years later, the initial legislation for Gulf War veterans claims. It was inadequate, but it was well-intentioned. 1996, COMISEA, the detonations of COMISEA were finally acknowledged by the Department of Defense. Regrettably, of all of the efforts of Gulf War veterans, that was the only chemical warfare agent exposure that was ever formally acknowledged by the Department of Defense. We advocates continue to believe that there were countless other incidents, including the January 19th plumes and others, exposing Gulf War troops to the entire arsenal of Iraqi chemical warfare agents at low levels, and perhaps some at, like myself, at acute levels going through exposures there. 7 years later, the 1998 Persian Gulf War Veterans Act that paved the way for a research program for Gulf War veterans. 7 years later, the legislation was passed. It mandated that by the following year, that a research advisory committee be created that would be composed of clinicians and researchers and Gulf War veterans and those who represented them who were affected. That was in 1998, and it took 3 more years before that research advisory committee was finally actually stood up and meeting. It took, that committee began its work in diligence, and by just a few years later, it was recognized that there was a new term for Gulf War illness called what we are calling it here today, a Gulf War illness. In 2006, that panel was influential in helping create the Gulf War Illness Research Program, a very small, by research standards, pot of money within the Department of Defense in an area called the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program. And if there's anything that we troops are good at, it's following orders. And so in the Department of Defense, this was a great place to put this pot of money, and it was congressionally directed. It was to be focused on treatments, something that the Department of Defense and VA up to that point were not doing. They were focused, we advocates have argued, and made the point that it was focused essentially on proving that there was nothing really wrong with us. By 2008, the Research Advisory Committee had issued a report that in headlines across the world, Gulf War illness is real. And that was the real pivotal in turning point. If all that advocacy that had happened before then hadn't happened, that committee wouldn't have existed, and the advocates and the funding wouldn't have existed in order for that research to be able to lead to that conclusion by that distinguished panel of Gulf War illness is real. By 2012, the Gulf War Illness Research Program, which I'll just call the GWIRP from now on, the GWIRP, the board have advocated for funding to grow that funding from that little bit of $5 million all the way up to $20 million. And it was sufficient enough to establish 2 research consortia, which is just a fancy word for teams. One at Boston University, we heard from Dr. Sullivan earlier, and one here at NSU. Dr. Klimas was influential in that team as well. By 2014, there was a study published about coenzyme Q10. Results had come about earlier, but it was finally published. That many years after the war, it was the first evidence-based, first publication of an evidence-based treatment that significantly improved the health, the symptoms of Gulf War illness. This year, that research now has come to fruition that we have now got clear evidence of something that has been long suspected. There is neuroinflammation, inflammation in the brain. And from the perspective of Gulf War veterans, the most significant part of that finding, for science, that's a huge finding, that's critically important, And anybody that's involved in neuroscience or in science knows what that means. But for we veterans, what does that mean to us? That means that this is finally evidence, clear scientific evidence that shows a treatable target. So that is really, really significant for us. We advocates are working on a number of different areas. So some advocates work directly with veterans. We heard that there's some here in the room that work on claims. That's critically important. Remember the 5-point plan of advocates have worked on all aspects of that. So in investigation, research, treatment, claims, and never again. All of those are critically important pieces of advocacy, and there are other areas of advocacy as well. Our advocacy, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that I head up an advocacy organization called Veterans for Common Sense that focuses on a number of areas, but toxic exposures, including Gulf War illness. Our website address is long but simple. It's just veteransforcommonsense.org. Right now, what we're working on actively, as of right this moment, in fact, some of it just this morning, sitting here in the waiting to come up on the panel, is we are working this Gulf War illness research program at work. We have to fight for funding every single year in order to keep it funded. So it expires at the end of the fiscal year. We don't do something active to get it funded. And so just last week, our champions in Congress, Congressman Gregorio Sablan from the Northern Mariana Islands, the U.S. territory, and Congressman Jack Bergman from Michigan, and introduced an effort that will continue and expand the funding to allow for, if they're successful, will allow for expanding to allow one additional clinical trial. 91outcomes.com is a website that I publish. It's just the number 91 and the word outcomes, so 91outcomes.com. We've got information there on what you can do, for listening, if you're here in the audience, on what you can do to ask your member of Congress to support continuing that research funding, without which all of this and all of this work over the last many years simply goes away. I'd like to mention that every ill Gulf War veteran most likely has a theory in what caused Gulf War illness. And I'm here to tell you that most of you are right. Even though your theories vary, most of you are right. What science has now shown is that mixtures of toxic exposures are likely what led to our illness. And of course, we're hearing from the scientists that there are some that are more likely the root of what's continuing what happened to us. There are others that have perhaps been less explored, that may be feeding into it, but we now have a good enough sense of what led to Gulf War illness. We're able to develop treatments. Some of us are now being tested, including right here at Nova Southeastern, right here in the Miami area, over in Sarasota, and on the other side of Florida, and in Boston, and throughout the country. And so there are a couple of resources that I want to point out to you as well. If you're looking for a clinical trial, you can go to a website called clinicaltrials.gov. Say that again, clinicaltrials.gov, and you can find that information. You can find the information on 91outcomes.com. You can find the information on the Gulf War Illness Research Program website, which just Google GWIRP, and you will find that very, very easily as well. And there are two Facebook pages that I want to mention. One is called Gulf War Illnesses, plural. Denise heads up another one called Gulf War Illness, singular, and then Gulf War Illness Related Discussion. All three of those are Facebook groups that are active as well. And I want to highlight just one last point, and that's that we heard a moment ago from Dr. Primus. Recruitment is why we're slow. And so if you are a Gulf War veteran who is either ill or is healthy but is concerned about, we're having some changes in the sound here, I hope that's okay. If you want to help other Gulf War veterans, actively volunteer to be participating in research studies. All of this advocacy we've been doing, the success that we've had in fighting for, it's now over $200 million in research funding. And I want to highlight how small that is. It sounds like a big number to those of us that don't have $200 million in our wallets. The general estimate out there is that for the pharmaceutical industry to bring one drug to market, it's a rough guess around $1 billion to bring a drug to market. And we have succeeded in getting about $200 million which has helped to unravel what is causing Gulf illness to continue, why the exposures that we experienced in the Gulf, why we didn't simply just get better right afterwards and move along, and what we can do about it right now today. So all of that is absolutely critical. I want to just look at my notes and make sure I didn't forget. So there's one area that I would be remiss in not talking about just very briefly, and that's some of the treatments that I'm taking personally that may be helpful. So number one on my list, and I want to add that almost all of the treatments that I'm taking are things that are now currently being studied. They're actively being studied, almost all of them. The first one, of course, is on the list is CoQ10. There are two different versions of it. Both are being studied. I take the version called ubiquinone with an ONE at the end, but the other's being studied actively as well. Before I began taking CoQ10, for those that knew me, I was walking with a cane. My pain issues and my joint and muscle issues were so severe that I've been walking with a cane for about 3 years, and that drug alone helped to make a significant difference in those. It's not a cure, but it's been a significant improvement. Theracumin is the nanoparticle version of a drug being tested, of a nutraceutical being tested called curcumin. It's being tested in a couple of trials, including one right here that will be done right here in the Miami-Fort Lauderdale area. Ginkgo is I take for memory and cognition. Bacopa is another that has a significant impact there as well. That's also now going to be an active trial. A number of vitamins, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatories that are all nutraceutical, including vitamins B, C, and E. That's my nutraceutical package. I take a package for my lung issues, which but they may be having an impact on my overall health as well. So one is a corticosteroid daily inhaler. Another for the chronic bronchitis is guaifenesin, also known as Mucinex. It's available over the counter. I take Nasonex, which is a nasal spray. It's a steroid nasal spray. I take a spray called Xlear, Xlear. Just pronounced, I say Xlear. Perhaps there's another way that the manufacturers say it, but it's saline plus xylitol. That was funded by, it was a board-funded study that looked at that as well and found that for those of us that deal with chronic sinusitis before taking this, 17 years of unremitting sinusitis. Singulair, which is also known as Montelukast, which is a prescription-based anti-inflammatory, and then two others that are treatments, but they aren't things that I take. One is that after all of these years of working on these issues, as someone who's been actively engaged on Gulf War illness ever since 1995, finally last year, in 2019, I was diagnosed with very severe sleep apnea. And sleep apnea is an under-recognized and underdiagnosed condition in Americans in general, but I believe particularly in our population as well. And I'm not a snorer. I'm atypical for sleep apnea, and it turned out that sleep apnea, if you have 30 or more episodes in an hour, that's the cutoff for the test that shows that it's severe. I had 93 in an hour, about 1.5 a minute, and not being a snorer was significant. And just doing the test, and during the test, when they put the CPAP on me, for those last few hours of it, when I went to drive home from Bay Pines, over an hour drive, and feeling the difference in my, and finally getting refreshing sleep. I wouldn't even take a nap today without the CPAP. So for veterans out there, one of the things that made a big difference was that there's a new protocol for testing for sleep apnea. I'd had 2 tests before that showed up negative because I never really fell asleep. And the new protocol is that they provide you a sleeping pill to take during the test, just one single sleeping pill, and it allows you to fall asleep. And once you're asleep, now the sleep apnea can be diagnosed. So I'm just putting that out there for veterans out there, that if you feel like you're having unrefreshing sleep, even if you're not a snorer, just like me, get checked out. And then the last one is also actively being studied by studies, and that's dietary issues. And those of us that have become chemically sensitive to all sorts of toxins, well, I believe that the reason that I've become dietary sensitive is because it's probably a similar mechanism, or perhaps the same mechanism, that things that I was able to tolerate before, I'm no longer able to tolerate. So 2 of those, one is a low glutamate diet, and the second has been very significant for me, and that's the low FODMAP diet, FODMAP. The short version for that stands for fermentable oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. That's a big mouthful for us veterans. What that means in short is that these are carbohydrates, these are complex carbohydrates, complex sugars. Any sugar is more complex than glucose. And eliminating FODMAPs from my diet was able to signal syndrome symptoms from having as many as 17 episodes a day for all the years up until 2 years ago, and being able to now go down to where I'm able to have some control based on what I'm eating. If anybody's interested in that, you can Google FODMAP, F-O-D-M-A-P, and you can read more about it. The VA does employ nutritionists, and nutritionists are typically trained in low FODMAP diet. There's an excellent one at Bay Pines for those here in Florida, and I would imagine that there should be those here elsewhere as well. And so those are some of the things that are helping me to lead a better quality of life. We still don't have a cure, and I still have challenges, but I'm able to be here today with you, whereas just a few years ago, that may not have even been possible. So with that said, I've taken probably more than my share of time, but I hope that that's useful to some veterans out there as well. I know that others here on the panel will have other things to add. And so with that last one, again, please, if you can, you don't have to be a veteran to make a call to your one member of Congress. In order to keep this treatment research going, in order to try and help all of the Gulf War veterans out there, please make one call to your member of Congress to support the Savon Bergman, your colleague, letter on Gulf War illness treatment research. Again, more information is available on 91outcomes.com. Thank you very much, and I'm really grateful to all the veterans that are joining me in
I'm going to go through some things that I've been involved since I came home, and being the nurse and observation in theater and all my training in education, I knew something was not right, despite whatever we were being told. So the observation skills I had as a critical care nurse, flight nurse, came into play. And so in the very beginning, just to give you an idea of how the veterans started coordinating, we had, as we got home, I think everybody was getting a computer if they didn't have one. And that was the difference between us and Vietnam vets, is the computer. And in the very beginning, we had the Prodigy Network before AOL or Yahoo or any websites. And it was just a bulletin board. And who it was that started it, and they looked down at us, and I remember them. It was Victor Sylvester, a father of a member that was going over in Desert Storm and had served in Vietnam. Each of them have more to the background than I can have time to cover. But he was the one that put up a bulletin board on the old Prodigy Network. And we collected, at that time I counted, and we grew slowly as the word got out to go to Prodigy, get on Prodigy, go to this bulletin board. And I think I counted at one time, it started slowly, 20, 30, and I think I counted up to 110. It was across the country. People in California, people on the East Coast. And the key was we had the computers. Many of us got fax machines because not everybody had a computer, but you know, if we could fax something to a local business place or office supply place, they could go pick it up. So we could get some paperwork out to them. And so Victor Sylvester, his nickname was Aussie, very influential, and started getting us going to DC. We also had Coy Overstreet, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam, a helicopter gunner. He did a whole lot more. He was on the Marine One helicopter. He was involved in.
We have 5 minutes, so.
Okay. But they were the initial. But that's how it started, and then we progressed. Yeah, I want to mention a few things. Veterans that I contact, number one, their comment has been, there's no healthy vets. Yes, there are healthy vets, but they're not on the computer. You know, quite bluntly, we have the vets that are sick on the computer. So we do have, you know, we've quoted 1/3 in the number that we use. So there's a lot of them that are still out there trying to maintain their employment, working. They may be sick, but dealing with it long term. And we really need those. We need them, the controls. Everybody has mentioned it. So one of the things that can help, I think, is we have to get Facebook groups by branch of service and by unit and by state. So that we can target these groups easier to get them in, be it healthy or sick, okay? And we need help doing that. We need individuals that are Marines or Navy to set up a Facebook page and we can circulate it. Therefore, we also get, if we have sick Gulf War vets, I certainly want to have it with different branches of service. They were in different locations, they did different things, and more or less exposures. So I think that's important to bring out. And the reason I'm bringing this out is I want to meet with the veterans in the room before we leave today to get to know you, you get to know us, because we need help. The ones of us that have been active, and I started as soon as I got home, we need your help. We can't do it all. And our researchers have their jobs to do. So we all need to step up to the plate. Number one, to know that we're not all sick. There are healthy veterans. We need to find them to help. Number two, your frustration when you go in is still there with the VA. And I want to point out the reason that is. Normally you have a protocol you go through. If you're having a body system problem, there's diagnostic tests they can do. We have no diagnostic test available for them to do it and say we have Gulf War illness. So they're struggling too. So don't get mad at your VA providers or your civilian providers, but help educate them. And there's other things I can say about that. But we need to think about how we reach out to each other, and veterans, it's about us. We have to step up to the plate and get better organized and work as a team. If we don't have this teamwork that we had in theater, we won't succeed, and we waste 2 to 3 years on a study getting the, you know, I'm up there fighting to get the funding, and then I'm going, I want everyone, if you need 100 vets, I want to fill those slots. We fought for the money. So, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Bill Watts. I'm a Gulf War veteran, as you heard earlier. I served with 40588 in the 1st Cavalry Division. I'm also a veteran advocate. I serve as part of some of the different groups that Anthony mentioned earlier. And I would like to start by saying quality of life begins with quality of care. The Gulf War veterans as a whole, because I travel around the country, I see have a trust issue.
Oh, yeah.
By this, I mean, they don't really trust the doctors that they see. They felt like prior they were a guinea pig. Well, I'll tell you this. I have one of the 3 doctors I trust sitting in the back of the room today. That's Dr. Kleines. Her research teams take pride and show a lot of professionalism in everything they do. I actually help with her research team because I want us to get better. And we can't get better if we do not educate ourselves. If you did not know at this time, Florida is the #2 veteran populated state in the United States. We overtook California about 4 months ago. Some of the things that the veterans have been saying is they go in and see these young doctors, and I've heard this quite a few times in several different areas around the country. is they'll go in, tell the doctor, hey, I think I have Gulf War illness, and the doctors look at them like, what is that? What is the Gulf War? I've never even heard of that. Some of the doctors coming through nowadays are, late 20s, maybe early 30s, wasn't even born whenever we went to the Gulf War. So they haven't got a clue. So we definitely have to start focusing on educating the doctors in the VA and the outside providers even further. I've worked with Precious Leaks, who is the recruiter for the program. We actually set up a Desert Shield, Desert Storm fishing invitational. If you didn't hear about it, I think we're going to do it again this year. Another statistic for you. There were over 700,000 soldiers deployed from the United States to the Gulf War. Over 300,000 of those are currently sick in some way, shape, or form. Dr. Klimas had mentioned the review panel, so did Anthony. If anyone is willing to serve on those research panels, the Gulf War Illness Research Panel that's funded by the DOD, I have paperwork over in the other room. Come and see me at the Gulf War Clinical Research table. Let's see here.
We have Veterans for Common Sense also sponsors consumer reviewers directly, so get the information from Bill, and we'll be happy to consider sponsoring you if you're interested in serving.
Additionally, I would like to point out something that I'm working on for the veterans. For those that monitor a lot of the websites, I am the Director of Operations for Fishing with America's Finest, and we work closely with veterans that are suffering from PTSD and other mental issues as well as physical issues. I'm trying to work with some of the research doctors to get that research going forward to help the veterans without over-medicating them in a sense. So if you're having some issues like that, also please stop and see me. Dr. Klimas did one of the best studies that I've went through so far. I've done almost every one that she's done. I call her up and tell her, hey, what's coming next? I'm willing to try it. Or I'll go out, I'll see something on the street, cryotherapy or this, and I'll report back to Dr. Klimas. Hey, I did this. This is what happened. What do you think? And Dr. Klimas will always listen to what you have to say. But one of her studies, I never can say this word right, the mifepristone and emerald study, which she brought up earlier, to me so far, that has been one of the best studies out there. For the first month, the first week of it, I didn't feel that great. Second week, I got a little better. As time went on, it was like almost as if I had been renewed. Then, unfortunately, I was fishing in a tournament on Lake Okeechobee and fell in the water and had a shock to my body, and it sort of killed what we had achieved so far. So I'm highly interested in the second round of the mifepristone emerald studies when it comes back up. Trust these doctors. They're not trying to do anything that will hurt you. They do not make you feel like you're a lab rat. It's there so others can learn and try to help us help ourselves. So with that said, I would like to pass it off to David.
Good morning. I just have one question, and I'm going to make it really brief. Who here, if you could, would do it all over again? See those hands up? That's why we need to help this research right now. Because we got into this voluntarily. I was 18 years old when I deployed to Desert Shield, Desert Storm. Just got married, found out my wife was pregnant. When I returned 6 months later, I was diagnosed with colon cancer. I ended up doing 18 years active duty. And it wasn't until I sat down in a briefing with Dr. Layla Abdullah at the Ross Kemp Institute. And she put up a slideshow and said, hey, does anybody have these signs and symptoms? And it was 3 pages long. And I put my hand up and I said, and Layla's going to shake her head when I say this. I said, I've had every single one of those. And not a single doctor can tell me what's wrong with me. 18 months later, I'm sitting here right now, suffering from leukemia and 5 organ cancers. Nobody can tell me why. I was scared to go to the VA. I'll be the first one to admit it. Didn't trust them. My father was a Vietnam veteran. Didn't trust them. But as soon as I got in, like Anthony had said, and Jimmy had said earlier, they got me to specialists. I have MRIs all the time. I just had one 2 weeks ago. Found another tumor. But you know what? They're treating me. They have no idea how to treat me yet, but they're treating me. All because I volunteered to get checked out, and they figured out what was wrong. That I was going to keep it brief. But that's why I had you guys raise up your hands, men and women, because we would do it all over again, because we have love for our country. Now, let your country love you. Volunteer, please be part of this research. Thank you.
Let's roll right into the question, please.
Yes, thank you so much. If anyone has questions, you can make your way over to the microphones on either side. We try and keep these brief. We're running into the clinicians panel as well, and we know you all want to hear from them and their expertise.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Colonel retired Alice Monica Russa-Sacker. You don't ever change your name when you are a female in the military because they will gladly lose whatever record that you have and the associated illnesses associated with that. I was Captain Alice Monaco in the Gulf War. I was 327 Signal Assistant S3 in charge of the rear area operations signal. That was all the signals that came in from the battlefield, had to be broken out to Riyadh, to Insular Turkey, or to the MMC. So we were a lucrative target, and we received many, many Scud attacks. I stopped counting at 42 because that is the answer to life, the universe, and everything. But that's a reference to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Every time a Scud landed, I would go out and check all of my signal people. So I was out in the open during many Scud attacks that were near hits. The Scud attack that killed the Youngstown, Ohio people was adjacent to us, and my people were part of the recovery operation. I stand today because I wanted to tell you when we redeployed, these were the elite airborne troops. 327 Signal was the airborne operation. These people were regularly running 6-minute miles in battalion formation when we left. When we returned, they were running 12-minute miles. Many of them were having respiratory illnesses. I became the S1, which is the personnel officer upon our return. And I had urged, I wasn't able to order anything because I was just a staff officer. Only the company commanders could order their troops to do anything, but I strongly recommended everybody start taking vitamins and quickly. The best vitamins that they could, I did, and it made a big difference. The people that did, I saw significant changes in their performance. And we just had overall degradation of performance of extremely fit troops. So I did want to put that out. That was 327 Signal Battalion Airborne, part of 18th Airborne Corps, immediately after redeployment.
Good morning. My name is James Williams, retired Lieutenant Colonel. I was in Fort Bragg. Also, I was a Brigade S2 for the 35th Signal Brigade. Very familiar with what she just mentioned because I was in the same area. Anyway, one of the things I noticed when I came back from the Gulf War immediately was that lack of energy, health issues, all kinds of problems. However, the way I dealt with it at the time was PT, working out, and overcoming those issues. However, over the years, there's a degradation. Your immune system gets compromised. You start feeling tired, and then you start fighting the VA trying to get recognized for that, which took me at least 10, 15 years to get them to grant me the recognition for the Gulf War. The other thing is, I met Dr. Timas on the research study at Miami VA. I volunteered. I'm an active participant until recently. I encourage anybody who's in the area to please participate in those studies. It's very important. The third issue, which Dr. Clemens mentioned briefly, and you just hit on that point, is cancer. I recently got diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and I'm suspicious that it has to do a lot with the immune system being compromised. Over a period of time, after a while, the immune system just can't fight anymore, and some of these things happen. So my view is that we're running out of time for many of us. If you don't have it, you may end up having cancer eventually. I'm treating and dealing with it the best I can. However, it's something that needs to be considered on this panel, the relationship between Gulf War syndrome and eventual development of cancer. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Thank you. That when I went into the VA, and I've only been in the VA now for about 7 months, the first 3 doctors looked at me and said, "How are you alive? You should be dead by now." I had a heart attack at 38. There's been a lot of issues, and like you said, we have to advocate for ourselves. We have to say, why is this? That's why the research is so important. So thank you.
And be proactive. The vets in the audience, prostatic cancer, breast cancer, ask for the screenings earlier than what their normal age requirement is. You push. Men get your PSA test, the females, the breast. And we are having earlier than normal heart attacks, strokes, pulmonary emboli. Some of the things I wanted to mention real quick. Females, they came back, they ended up with hysterectomies, couldn't carry a fetus to term. So we have that problem with females. The heart stroke, we had thyroid problems showing up. We had the men particularly had renal stones, kidney stones, and that started early and it continues to this day of men having, and it seems like a higher number than I've seen in the past.
Yeah, so my name is Robert Krogh. I was just wondering, with Dr. Clemens' office and everybody, and then you go to the VA, they can't speak. They don't, one doctor can't talk to the other. There's no system in place to talk to Dr. Clemens' people or vice versa. The only reason Dr. Clemens can get anything is because she actually goes into the VA and does it. But nobody else can talk to the VA or anything, or even get any type of medical records. I have to download it on my phone and send it in and give it, because there's just no way that any of, like, Dr. Clemens' office can get anything from the VA.
Robert, that's extremely significant, and what we've learned, and Dr. Clemens actually touched upon it, there is Privacy Act information that is so important that we have to yield to. Now, what we can do as veterans, remember, we're driving, so what you can do is you can elect in your research work, elect to have a copy of your research project put into CPRS or your VA medical records. You can elect that, transfer of information, have that put in there. Once it's in your medical records, then you can call that information, you can request that information, you can download that information and attach it to a claim, continue to build on it, take it to an outside doctor. But please understand, it's all just Privacy Act. We can't make those calls. Doctors are researchers. It is its own silo. And for them to pick up the phone and call, there's so much Privacy Act information that's tied to it that they would be breaking rules.
Okay, the question is they have to sign those HIPAA Act forms. Why can't they talk? They have us sign the form saying about information passing across, yet nobody can still talk.
One thing that I believe may be helpful is once you have done that study, then you can take it, print it out yourself, and take it to the doctor.
It's a great question you're asking. It's a problem. I actually just asked the chief of staff to meet with us about that, to try to make that link between what's called community care and VA care much tighter and more communicative. It was really crummy the first year they rolled it out. This year they did some stuff to make it a little easier to get back and forth. But I want to talk to Jimmy's thing about getting your research record into your clinical record, because some of you are trying to get disability, and if you have an expert make the diagnosis, it really helps you. And obviously you can't be in one of our research studies if an expert, meaning us, hasn't made that diagnosis. So it's very, very helpful. to actually use your research record to help you get your disability claim process. It's another point. But you make a great point, and it's something we have to actively pursue. I have some good ideas. I'd love to hear your ideas.
What Dr. Clemens just said, I had tried for years to get chronic fatigue syndrome into my records. I went to Dr. Clemens's CFS clinic. She wrote up all the notes, diagnosed it along with fibromyalgia, and next thing you know, it finally got approved when I turned it back in.
Okay, see, I've done all that. I actually go to her clinic now. And I say something to my doctor in the VA, and they're, like you said, they're too young, they don't understand what's going on, and they don't know how to find anything, and you go to offer it to them, they won't take it. Because it's not a system on the VA.
Myself and Precious are currently trying to put together something for the Miami VA where we're going to invite the doctors from all the clinics, the chief of staff. Hopefully Dr. Klimas has time to be there as well. And we want to go over a lot of the issues that the Gulf War veterans are having, as well as the research that is going on for the doctors to educate the doctors so they know what to look for and they can recommend the veterans to the correct clinics.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert.
So I want to answer your question. My name is Violeta Reneska, I'm a nurse practitioner at the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine, Dr. Klimas Clinic. And I understand what you're talking about exactly. So all our notes, veterans that we see in our clinic, all our notes are sent back to the VA and supposed to be scanned and uploaded in the VA system. As Dr. Klimas told me, they are under VISTA images. So if your doctor don't find it, ask him to look under VISTA images. Thank you.
Well done. Well done.
I have a question for Mr. Arroyo. My name is Rocky Greenhouse. I'm a retired Air Force veteran, and I've spent some time over in the sandbox as well. I'm having trouble going through the VA, Bay Pine specifically, as in, all right, we've got step 2. We're going to send you to a specialist. All right, cardiologist, we got that next week. Neurologist. If you go down to Lee County, you can get it in 2 months, or otherwise you're going to get a call from DC, which actually happened about 5-6 months after the referral. And there's no immunologist at Bay Pines. So I'm going through the outside world. How do we make some sort of link between the research being done here and getting that over to private doctors?
That's a great question. First off, I'd like to say thank you for keeping the Air Force keeping me from being blown up on the battlefield. So the Air Force annihilated all aerial attacks. So thank you for that. Until electronic medical records get to where they need to, I would approach that as a snail mail process. So if you go see a professional on the outside, get full copies. Ask for full release of the science, of the findings. Take that, and then you can have all of that go to the VA, go to your clinic, and have every bit of that evidence piled into your CPRS or your VA medical record. And even more, PDF it and keep it available, so should you down the road, if you find yourself putting in a compensation and pension claim, add that to your medical records, add that as an additional piece to further support your claim until there's that personal information release where electronically it moves back and forth. I believe we're getting close. The VA is actually looking at improved health medical care records, so something to look forward to. Great question. Anything else, sir?
No, that's all. Thank you.
Go Air Force, aim high.
Rob. Hello, I'm Mark Chrisman. As you already know, I run a Gulf War podcast, and a lot of my listeners, I know they're probably watching right now or listening, but a lot of the complaints and responses that I get from a little over 4,000 people in general is part of my short-term memory issues too.
Take your time, Mark.
I just lost my train of thought.
So we had 4,000 people that replied to your podcast with the same question.
The care that they receive.
Care, quality care.
Quality of care that they receive. they hear comments such as, you have pain, well, you should train more like a SEAL. I myself have experienced doctors telling me that they do not believe in the fibromyalgia diagnosis, and they don't understand why it's there. And these aren't young doctors, these are seasoned doctors that are probably practicing for 30 or more years.
Mark, what we're going to do is you and I are going to have a one-off. We're going to discuss on how you and your listeners can start framing your message in a slightly different way with the expectation that it is acknowledged and you're able to move through the Veterans Health Administration, and moreover, should you choose to, you and your listener move into the Veterans Benefits Administration more seamlessly to free you up for more time for research. How about that?
That would be awesome. And I do have one question. It was actually probably meant for Dr. Klimas and her team, but I just recently, through my own research, connected a lot of my symptoms and illnesses that I'm dealing with to genes and playing with gene mapping a little bit. I'm not a doctor, I'm a retired paralegal and a retired PC technician. So I know how to research, but I don't always know how to understand what I'm reading. I was just curious if there's any more studies out there that are directly related to gene mapping and how all of the exposures that we were exposed to while we were over there may have just wrecked our gene map and changed it.
The short answer is yes.
We'll get with you guys afterwards.
Yeah, let's do one-on-one and we'll define it.
Very briefly, the message that you're carrying right now is a critically important one. There may be VA officials listening in and watching this video today or in the future. I would just note that it is beyond unacceptable that 29 years after the 1991 Gulf War, that we are still having veterans like this veteran who we're talking with right now, who are still being told that it's all in their heads. And that's unacceptable. The 80% denial rate of Gulf War veterans' claims for fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, and irritable bowel is beyond acceptable, and we will continue to fight on those efforts. Thank you for sharing that you're still having these unacceptable experiences.
I'm Tess O'Brien and I hate microphones. Let's see. Okay. Came here from Georgia. So glad I did. I want to thank you all for having opportunities like this, and I want to thank Denise Nichols for getting in my ass. Try to do it this way. First of all, I agree with what Chrisman says about how people kind of look at you differently. I'm a Navy vet. Part of the reason it's taken me so long is because they're like, well, it's on the ground. And it's visible. These illnesses that we have are invisible illnesses. So people don't believe it. They don't understand it. I'm concerned about some of the rare diseases that I'm afraid that this causes. I've had to learn that you have to go to your civilian doctors in order to get proof if you want to get your service connection. I'm currently 70% rated. None of it is for anything that I have that's slowly killing me, and none of it is for Gulf War illness. I was diagnosed in 2006 with a primary immunodeficiency. Had to leave my job, had to leave my last year of nursing school. Actually, in 2010, I left my job because my body couldn't take it anymore. For those of you who don't know, primary immunodeficiencies cause other diseases like cancers. I attended a study once I left my job in 2010, the RISK program up in Washington, D.C., headed by Dr. Lee at the time, a very smart neurologist. He says, Tess, you have CVID. Okay. They ran a bunch of other tests, found some other things for me. Give me my information about what's wrong with me, go home and get your VA hospital to follow up. Yeah. Okay, well, when you have illnesses like this, your time, your money, your energy, there's never enough of it. Went back to Dr. Lee because after Denise got in my head about this nutritional study this December, and I went to it. Thank you. Got a lot of good results from it. IBSD has abated for right now. I'm organic. Eating much better. I go to see Dr. Lee for a follow-up appointment. Go for illness used to be whenever you went to the study up there, they had you come back if you got more diseases diagnosed. They don't do that now. So Dr. D did some blood work, and he says, "Yes, things are changing." Got out his little notebook that he took all the information down from all the veterans he's been seeing over the years. I was surprised at the amount of numbers of people with rare diseases like mine, CVID, HPP. So I go to the VA hospital, trying to get treatment right. I'm getting treatment because I asked my general practitioner, who is awesome, who doesn't know anything about Gulf War illness, but she sends me to specialists if I request it. Told her last year I wanted to see me a geneticist. Ain't got one. Sent me to Salt Lake City then. Hooked me up, did the information, took down all my information, did the blood test, you got HPP. Oh, and it cost about $1 million and more a year to treat. Go to my VA doctors, denied. Even though I meet the FDA requirements for it, for childhood onset. How are we supposed to continue doing follow-ups when we are doing our jobs and getting the extra information for our VA doctors? I've spent a small fortune getting proof that I have fibromyalgia, proof that I have rheumatoid arthritis, chronic fatigue symptom, and IBS issues. But whenever I send it up, when I go to see my VSO, I get denied. I've got an appeal since 2014 I'm waiting on. And in the meantime, I'm slowly dying. I want to be able to advocate for this. I am a child of Agent Orange. The geneticist tells me that some of your problems are from the Gulf War, and some of it is from Agent Orange, and I'm afraid to continue genomic sequencing on you because the VA will not treat you for this one condition I just diagnosed. Okay, and Mr. Hardy, I want to know this, because I've asked to try these treatments like you have. I use the Clear. I've done the vitamins and stuff like that. But whenever I ask the VA if they've got any of these in their formulary, they don't. And every time I need my immunoglobulin therapy, which I take weekly, they have to special order it. So is there any kind of way that we can get this stuff, the most basics, in an easy way?
Yeah. So the very short version is that to get nutraceuticals into the VA formulary, there's a process for that, and that's where this research is leading. So these phase 3 clinical trials will help us to get there. And I just learned in the last couple of weeks that there's a new protocol at the VA, or at least new to us, that they'll now consider treatments that have at least a strong phase 1 clinical trial. So for researchers in the room, just please be aware of that. If you have a strong phase 1 clinical trial, they will now consider it on a case-by-case basis to get that treatment into the VA formulary.
Hi, good morning. I wanted to thank all of the veterans, first of all, and all of the armed forces that are out there fighting for our country. And I am a wife of a veteran, and I go with my husband to a lot of the doctor's office. Mr. Hardy, he has a lot, maybe every single symptom that you do. And what I want to find out, and what I would like to see more, is that I understand I've heard everybody here, and we all are seeing the same pains and aches and diseases. And it's not so much about the disease or about the pain, but you are all trying to fight for that. And you're making it more public and more out there for us. I just want to be able to see how much harder can we fight for those veterans that don't want to come out to the public because they are very shy. My husband also, when he came back from the Gulf War, he didn't want to go to the VA. And the VA, as what he's saying, has changed a lot. But it's still very hard. And we have the new practitioner, not the doctors, coming out to see them. And they're kind of dismissing what they feel, what they're saying, because they say, there's no way that you have all of this and you're walking in here. And we still work, we are working full time. And we're not, he's at 30% and he's going through all of this, he has the CPAPs, and I know and I hear them that I don't want to use this because it's a pain in the butt. I don't want to have to be drinking millions of pills and vitamins. And we have those veterans that don't want to because they're just tired and they did what they had to do for their country. Now we want them to be helped. Help our veterans that were signed up, that were told go, like you said. How many will go back? My husband still saying, I'll go back right now. And I'm like, well, why? Look what happened to you. And we are here, I am here to represent those, and my family's here. My son wants to give them a better, health follow-ups, or not so much pills and this, more nutrition, more this, but they don't want to do it because they just want to enjoy life for what they have.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is your husband participating in
Yes,
clinical
sir.
research?
Yes,
He is
yes.
as well?
We were able, like about a year and change, we found Dr. Klimas,
Okay.
and she is, and we are aware, and we're coming out. But again, we work full-time.
Understood.
And it's hard for us to come out.
I'd like to acknowledge primary caregivers. Thank you for what you do. It's very important that there is a representation. Please, let's talk before you leave today for your prize for participation. Guess what? You're an advocate. You just crossed the line. You're there. And welcome. The water's warm. Your son as well.
Yes.
Welcome. You're also an advocate. Let's talk.
I just
Thank you.
understand that we want to be able to put out the word a little better. I even told my son, maybe you could start the website because
We'll help you.
we're
We'll help you. It's in the room. We've got
we're not savvy at internet. Put it in a billboard, let them know the newspapers, for our representative, for our governor, for whoever.
Right, and don't forget
Come
this
out
is
there
medical.
and reach out to them like you came and say, here's the paper, sign up to go out in our war.
Well, it's also like you just stated, a lot of the Gulf War veterans are still working. And I've had veterans approach me asking, can we get the research, say after 4 or 5 p.m. during the week, or have a Saturday or Sunday research period?
And make the caregivers also aware that they suffer, and other than just like the normal cold, that they don't know, that they don't understand what they have, and make them aware that they're human. And you're not just a number that it's accumulating in the waiting room.
We're with you.
They are there, and this young, new people are here because of them, because they fought for your country.
I think we could share some very powerful messaging that message will reach those clinicians. We have to get better at communicating. That's just all there is. And let me also share, remember, GWI, Gulf, Whiskey, India, Gulf War illness is a research term. So don't walk into your regional line care team and say, I have GWI.
Yeah.
You have presumptives, you have suspicions of presumptive illnesses, chronic multi-symptom illnesses. You're concerned about my fatigue and my fibromyalgia or my irritable bowel syndrome or my IBS.
And the communicating of the computers, of the programs, it is very difficult. The VA is not friendly.
We'll teach you.
We go to Miami and we're moving up to Tallahassee. For
for all of the stories from the people in the audience as well as our advocates. Really appreciate all you guys have done and are doing now. So if you want to take a seat back in the audience, we did have a break scheduled. So if you'd like to now move over to the atrium, we're doing our poster session for the research portion. But we're also having the clinicians panel here for those veterans and those who would like to hear more of a clinician perspective as well as ask questions of them. So for those of you who don't know, I'm sure you all do, Dr. Nancy Klimas is a wealth of over 30 years experience treating these conditions. And then we also have Irina and Violetta, Irina Rosenfeld and Violetta Reneska. They're both board certified nurse practitioners, so they've been working with these conditions for a long time as well. Lastly, we also have Denise, and she is a nurse with the Veteran Access Clinic, which was talked about a bit earlier today by one of our VIPs. So she's going to share a bit more about her experience working with veterans there and how you might be able to connect with them. And you can also get their information across the street. The Veteran Access Clinic does have a table. So without further ado, please, I'm just going to allow the presenters to get started and give them their presenter.
Thank you so much. So we try to organize this in a way that would be really helpful. Remember that we're also live streaming, that there's an audience out there. And we're recording, and this will end up on our YouTube page, our YouTube station, whatever you call that. So they'll be able to be referred back to. But we took some of your most common questions, and we asked each of the people that are going to present to do a very short little presentation on a very tight subject. And then we'll also do Q&A, so there'll be plenty of time to talk about things. We are a larger group in this. Dr. Irma Ray is not here. She had a medical emergency she had to attend to. She is an environmental medicine expert. In fact, she's the immediate past president of the American Academy of Environmental Medicine. And she has started a training program here at Nova Southeastern University just this past year in environmental medicine with a real focus on military toxic exposure. Very exciting, the first one in the country, really important thing to be doing. Dr. Bested, who had to walk away because we ran a little late here and she didn't get to give her talk in a timely way, is the medical director of our clinical program here and is an integrative medicine physician who joined us from Canada just a couple years ago. And she is also helping coordinate how we're growing our clinic and expanding veterans' access to our clinic, which is a clinic that is really focused on complex medical conditions. We're chronic fatigue syndrome experts before the Gulf War, and then the Gulf War happened 30 years ago, so I really want to put my years in this place, make that 40, not 30. But the point is that the best home base I can think of for Gulf War illness, wherever you live, whatever you're doing, is in an integrative medicine program, because your whole body is affected, and the focus of treatment in integrative medicine is trying to restore health, not system by system, but in a very cellular and organically healthy way. It's a very good thing to consider. So with no further ado, I'm going to actually let people introduce themselves as they go down, because I'm tired of talking today. And I don't know who's first. Okay.
So once again, my name is Violetta Reneska. I'm a nurse practitioner working. Working at the Institute for Neuroimmune Clinic. So I'm just going to give a quick overview, more for layperson, because you guys, if you're veterans, you know that. So who are the Gulf War veterans? So Gulf War area started in 1999 with Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, but that lasted for about a year. The Gulf War military theater is still open, so anyone who served in that area from 1991 to 1990 till now is considered a Gulf War veteran. Veterans that
coming from these regions are complaining about symptoms of fatigue, pain, rashes, GI problems, dizziness, respiratory problems, all the symptoms that we know as a combo illness. However, the combo illness is more a research term that pertains to veterans of the Desert Shield and Desert Storm. Veterans that, any veteran from Congo area will be diagnosed with something called chronic symptom illness or medically unexplained illness. And this is an umbrella that covers four conditions: myalgic encephalomyelitis, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, functional gastrointestinal disorders, and undiagnosed illness. So what is chronic fatigue syndrome? Chronic fatigue syndrome, the main symptoms is fatigue. Fatigue usually is not relieved by rest. It's not proportional to the effort that you do. Other symptoms include pain, headaches, cognitive problems, memory concentration issue, GI problems, sleep problems. Many of the symptoms of chronic fatigue overlap with the fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia, the main symptoms is pain. It's widespread pain. Patient can also have symptoms of fatigue and memory problems. The functional GI disorder is mostly functional dyspepsia, other known as indigestion and irritable bowel syndrome. And the last one is any other symptoms that you are not maybe diagnosed with as a part of other illness. So if any veterans have those symptoms, it's very important that you ask for care, because the veterans that I see, they often say, oh, I have friends, I have coworkers, they have those symptoms, but they don't go to the doctor. So it is important that you ask the doctor and you look for help. And Denise will tell you, will talk to you about how to talk to the doctor to be heard and to address the symptoms. Thank you.
Hi, again, my name is Denise. I am here on behalf of Dr. Bested, who unfortunately had an appointment and she was not able to stay. She is a medical director of the Institute for Neuroimmune Medicine. She is the chair of the integrative medicine and is trying to put together an integrative medicine degree here at Nova. So her topic was how to get the best bang for your buck. You have 10 minutes with your physician. Your time is precious. You don't want to waste it. But remember one thing, your doctors are there to help you. So come ready to help your doctor help you. Okay, not all doctors are trained in conditions related to the deployment, specifically in the Gulf War or any kind of military maneuvers. The good news is that doctors are quick learners and speed readers. Doctors do know how to give supportive care, so if you're having trouble, symptomatic trouble, ask for care for the symptoms that you're having. There's a few tips for your next doctor's healthcare visit. Come prepared. Organize the day before. Maybe bring someone who will be an extra pair of ears for you, because you're not going to remember everything that your providers are telling you. Prioritize your need. Bring something to write down what is said to you. When you come, bring a list of your medications, your supplements, specifics. How do you take it? When do you take it? If there's any side effects. If you have symptoms, bring a list of your symptoms. Is there anything that's improved? Is there anything that's worsened? Write down if you need a referral. If you need a referral, what type of referral do you need? And if you have forms to be completed, bring those forms. If you're asking for any kind of a scheduled medication, any medications at all actually, bring your bottles with you so that we can write the prescriptions correctly. Tell us in your symptoms what's improved, what's gotten worse. The way that you say this, you'll say, before I was able to do this, this, and this, like we talked about the Gulf War veterans, before they could run 6-minute miles, but now they're running 12-minute miles. So come with parameters, and that helps us to gauge, are you doing better or are you doing worse? If you have a problem, do you have psychosocial problems? What exactly are there? Are you gaining weight? Are you losing weight? If you've seen referrals, tell us who have you seen, what have they said. If you need referrals, ask about counseling. What type of individual, what group, who's available, where do I go, is there a cost, and how's a referral made? If you have any questions about your referral, ask. We're very happy to provide that information for you. If you have forms to fill out, tell us when the forms need to be filled out by. Fill out as much of the detail as you can. Please put your name on it at the minimum. When we're filling out forms, we need to have your names on there so that we don't lose them. For history, some of your histories are extremely complex. Write down bullet points. When you're bringing records this thick, it's very difficult for physicians, however fast they may be readers, to get through all of that. So the best way is just to put dates, put times, and bullet points. And if you could remember the medications, the referrals, the progress, put all of those in kind of summarized forms. For appointments, like I said, yeah, bring a summarized history of all of that. As far as your illness goes, very important when it comes to the Gulf War illness, what you want to do is you want to say, when did the illness start? When were you deployed? Did you develop any infectious diseases? Did you have any accidents? Did you have any crashes? How was it treated? How did it affect you? Is it affecting your sleep? Is it causing pain? What type of pain? Where does the pain go? What were you like before you started getting sick, and where are you now? Finally, a summary is you come prepared, medications, supplements, your symptoms. Try to keep it down to 3. If you tell us 15 things, we're not going to remember. Bring with 3 very important things that we can deal with on a visit. 3 very important problems, 3 very important issues. If you need referrals, write it down. An old Army vet told me this: the shortest pencil is greater than the longest memory. Don't rely on your memory when you come in to see us. Write it down, be specific, summarize, and we are here to help you. Thank you.
My name is Adina Rosenfeld. I'm a nurse practitioner. I work with Dr. Klimas here at Nova Southeastern University almost 10 years, and I start seeing patients referred to us from VA. I'm very thankful for you coming to us. And as Dr. Klimas mentioned earlier today, this illness, we can correlate. My training with chronic fatigue very much helpful, and I also trained in integrative medicine. I want to say particular thank you to Anthony Harding. He covered my talk before. He's definitely the adopter of integrative medicine, and I mentioned that we incorporate integrative medicine a lot because the illness has so many, the multi-system illness. There is a neuroinflammation, but we also, over the 30 years, I see in patients metabolic disbalance, I see endocrine problem, neurologic problem, I see multi-system problem, which I cannot address just with medication. What we see often polypharmacy, when for each new symptoms you are given drug, and you're taking this drug for a long time, sometimes more than it's supposed to be, and this medication may cause its own drug-induced deficiencies, where this is why we are trying to put supplements and nutraceuticals, because we know that some medication we take in chronically possibly affect and make some deficiencies in the body. So this slide, I advocate that you need to see physician, in a nurse practitioner, any clinician. I do not advocate for you to listen podcast and start taking supplements or nutraceuticals. You have to have physical exam. You have to have evaluation and educated recommendation based on the science. Supplements can be very helpful, they can be dangerous. Where you obtain supplements, which protocol you follow, it is important. And I really like to work with the patients and I call it personalized medicine, because you really need to put some work too. You know that because you live with this illness for a long time. Everything important. Your sleep is important because we are circadian creatures. We have to live in 24 hours circle, and it's important if we sleep at night and what time we went to sleep, and it's important what time we wake up, and it's follow particular hormones during the daytime. It's important for you to be outside, and sun should shine to your retina and you produce melatonin, and then this melatonin put you asleep at night, and then in the morning cortisol will be highest level, and it will wake you up and make you less in pain and less inflamed and ready to go. Unfortunately, we don't see it in our patient very often, and as a clinician you can address all these details, and this is where lifestyle modification, you have to do your work and participate in all these lifestyle modifications. There is a lot of things what we can address without medication. Meditation, there is backwards, I don't see my slide, I go by memory. Yes. I want to give you something to take home, and we live in a Western civilization. Onset illness and your initial environmental exposure. Unfortunately, we continue being exposed to not just the tens or hundreds, thousands of chemicals, and even people without, patients without your exposure develop a lot of chronic multi-system illnesses on a daily basis. We see another patient with the same problem, with the same symptoms very often. I put links on this slide, and you can have access later. So there one very, very comprehensive website, and it's on the top of the slide, Environmental Working Group. You can find on this slide information and link to local information, what's the water quality in your city, what's the air quality in your city, and etc. There is an app for the food, also supported by this organization, Environmental Working Group. This app will help you to define what kind of food you eat. And it's important because if you only have your food intake from conventional grown food, sometimes their expected nutritional value is not really there because of poor soil or agricultural practices. And I know that it's expensive and difficult, but we advocate for organic food, or at least you can use this app and see dirty dozen and choices of your food. On the top of this website, it's not a medical, it has disclaimers that it's for your information only. It's called MyTavin. It's absolutely free, but you can put your medications there or symptoms. You can play with this app, and it can guide you, and you have to show it and share with your clinician. It can show you what possible nutrient deficiency you have because you take a medication or you have particular symptoms. It helps. On another link on the slide, I use with some of my patients even during the visit, and they fall asleep sometimes, so got very, very relaxed, and I with them. It's called Health Journeys, and it's a big library. It's evidence-based. It's a really good research behind all this meditation and guided interventionary. And you can have access to this library and pick for fatigue, for fibromyalgia, for anxiety, for sleep, all kind of meditation, and you can pick which author or which provider on that website. And then Breathe to Relax, it's supported by DoD and developed by DoD. It's a meditation, really short meditation app you can have on your cell phone. and use it as many times during the day. It's convenient. There is from self-care, from what you can do for yourself and help clinicians. So you need to discuss diet, you need to discuss your sleep, you need to address stress, right? And I'm trying to give you a link. Instead of talking today, you can come home and follow. This is one of my integrative medicine teacher, and I decided to give him some podium here because he also, you can see from his credentials, he also Colonel of United States Army, but he also was the director of center in the World Health Organization, and he's currently leading integrative health clinic in California. But he also has website, and I want you to follow his website because there is a really nice publication on self-care, and you can read it, his statement, and this is kind of theme for my talk today, that chronic disease requires approach Chronic disease requires an approach in which healing is important as curing. The focus is not just on countering illness, but also on supporting health, fully integrating preventative care and self-care, which this treatment of the disease, illness, and injury. That approach is called integrative health. This is how I will finish, because we really like to integrate advanced biomedical science and still use your self-care techniques and we've seen it, we know that it works, and we want to just continue on the same road. Thank you.
Go ahead. Please. Me again. Okay, now I'm me, here today. I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I have the very unique opportunity of working in 2 camps. I'm going to be working with the Center for Neuroimmunology with the Gulf War veterans. I am also going to be treating veterans and their families through a grant, a $5 million grant that was offered by the state of Florida to serve the Gulf War, not just Gulf War, to serve veterans and their families, their immediate dependents. You just make an appointment, I don't think. Do we have these? Sorry, I do not know how to work this. All right, there should be a number there that you can call to reach the Veterans Access Clinic. The services that we offer for the Veterans Access Clinic are dental, their optometry, their family therapy, their physical therapy. There's just a multitude of services. Please use those services because this is a limited grant for right now. If we have veterans who are using it, their families who are using it, this is going to be something that's going to be continued, and I really do urge you to take advantage of these services. So the last thing that I wanted to say is I come away from this conference with a couple of very key realizations. It takes time to turn a ship around. 29 years for the first wave of Gulf War vets, which is way too long. If something is wrong, keep talking about it. You're going to go to your primary care. Those of you who would come to see me, who bring your families, bring your symptoms to us, and also talk about it to Congress. Talk about it with each other so you can validate the problems that you're having. That's one of the ways that you can advocate for yourselves and for others. There are people who care about your suffering. They're doing work from the molecular level, like Dr. Klimas, all the way to the whole person level. Someone like me, I don't have the specific information that Dr. Klimas has, but your provider should have access to people who do know what we don't know. So come to see us. We're happy to see you. We're happy to treat you. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much.
So, again, this is nationally being streamed, and yet we're talking about a lot of local resources, but that's okay. Something that's happened in the VA system in the last 3 years, a congressionally directed space, is that the VA is increasingly relying on community resources. And you as veterans have the right for rapidly responsive care. And so you all are aware that there's something called the Community Care Program, separate from this new program the state of Florida gave us. You can be referred for what you need that you don't think you're getting in a timely way from the VA by your primary care provider, anything that is, not just what we do, but whatever. So that's important to realize that you can use this community care referral system to help you with your own health care needs. I'm speaking to the national audience because very few VAs have a Gulf War illness expert, as in very few, one hand. And there are hundreds of VA facilities, there's very few experts. So if you don't think you're getting the expert care you need at your facility, you can ask your community care consult to the community you live in for an expert that could really help you. And I am promoting integrative or functional medicine for that consult when people can't get what they're supposed to get at the VA. Now the VAs have a little bit of integrative medicine, some VAs have a lot of integrative medicine, some of them have practically none. But a clinician, integrative medicine physician or provider would certainly be the minimum requirement I would be looking for within VA care for Gulf War illness. So I'm just going to say that. So and I also want to give Violetta 5 gold stars. First, she got a doctorate in December. But second, she's the one that established at NOVA our veterans clinic in our complex medical illness program. And so for the last 3 years, been that long? 4 years? 4 years, she's been oh my goodness, 5 years, primary point of contact for consults that are coming from the VA. We're trying to figure out what we're doing now with this new state grant that lets us take care of veterans without insurance. That's really exciting because right now, if you came from the VA pays for that. And that's great. But this new clinic, the one that Denise is going to be the Miami face of, the Kendall Clinic, but there's also a clinic up here in Davie as well. That clinic is doing primary care for veterans and their families. And as I say, doing some stuff we can't do at the VA, like your teeth. How many veterans get dental care at the VA? It's a very tightly restricted privilege. You know, you have to have had an oral injury while active duty or be 100% service connected to have that service. So it's great. Take care of your mouth. It's really important to your care, your health, your overall health. So now what we're going to do next is use a question and answer period to answer the questions you want to raise. So yeah, I'll speak up, but you go with the first question at the microphone. Go ahead. Since you waited so patiently and never were heard from the last time.
It's okay. I appreciate you doing this and the opportunity that you have that now is given to the community. My name is Rico. I'm a Dallas veteran. Deal with multiple things that you have heard from around, which, I mean, as a man, you know, they say it's not, men don't have it, but it's mostly, they say, a women disease, so I had to fight with them. But even with the what NOVA is now offering, which is appreciated, my wife, you know, I work with a veteran service organization, Disabled American Veteran, and we put the flyers out on our desk for the services that the NOVA is passing out. And my wife is getting ready to do the eye and I guess the dental. So I want to say thank you for
That's
for
great.
that. The other thing is, as veterans, I think that we don't understand the power that we have, even when we're going to y'all, going to doctors and everything. we don't understand what we have. We have treatments that doctors are given, and based upon, you know, 'cause in order for us to do a disability claim, we need to hear from what the doctors have to say. Some doctors in the VA, probably not you, but they don't want to fill out the DBQs. They're very hesitant about filling out the DBQs because it's going to reflect them something negative. They worry about it coming back, but it affects us as veterans trying to get our disability. So I'm hoping that even we're talking with you about this, that you can try to encourage not only just in Miami, but also in the other VA system, that one is a regulation, they must fill out DBQs. They have to fill them out and fill them out properly. The other thing is, even going out into the community, there's got to be a level where I think one of the gentlemen already has spoken about, where the communication is a lot better between the different VA, because I do take care at the Miami, but my primary is West Palm Beach, and there's a disconnect. Yeah, there's a disconnect in between the two systems. So it's got to be a better way to communicate, a better way to link. But even on my point of want to see the different doctors, if you do not get what you're asking from that doctor, it's okay to ask to go and see another doctor. You don't have to take just that one opinion. You do not have to take it. So a lot of us think that what that particular doctor has given me your opinion is something I can't. But you have the right to request, and you have to fight for it. What they said, the squeaky wheel get the oil. If you don't fight for it, you may sell it in just what they said. But if we have to fight. We are veterans. We've known to fight. But even in our VA system, even though it's called a VA, it's still our veterans. And we have to fight to get what we fought for. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to comment on it because I hear that a lot from my patients, the veterans. And you do have to be your own advocate, and you have to ask. And sometimes you will hear no, or you will get nowhere. You just have to keep asking, and eventually it will get done. Because sometimes I hear patients that they've been asking for a year to be seen in our clinic, and if they're persistent, they will get to us. But if they give up after they hear first no, then they will be suffering quietly, and nobody will know about it.
Along with that, veterans and the wives that are here, 2 comments. Number one, a lot of the VA hospitals, you may not know, I'm out of Denver, so, and I think majority here are Florida, but there is a need to find out, you can find out, go to the administrator of your facility. They usually have a veterans committee, okay? If they don't have one, you can definitely bring it forward as an idea that you would be willing to serve as a contact person and be on a veterans committee for Desert Storm vets. They should have it for Hawaii, but we have in Afghanistan. So those are things that you can find out if your VA hospital or your VA facility has a veterans committee. They used to have them all over the place, so you have to check, find out, bring it forward as a suggestion. If they don't have one functional, that one be started. I know that they have town hall meetings, and to be aware, when you go to town hall, it's kind of like they get up and have their program speeches, like they're talking to the vets, and they're not hearing from the vets. We're all veterans. We all had our different ranks and our different jobs. Speak up and get those changes happening. It's not just for you, but it's for all the other veterans in that hospital, that facility. Okay? And that's what I mean by teamwork and stepping up to the issue. Not only that, with our representatives and our senators, they have town hall meetings. Are they having a town hall meeting for veterans specifically, even if they're not on the Veterans Committee? You can call their local office. They have people in their office that are veteran staffers, for veterans issues, and bring it up. Ask them to have a town hall meeting in your district, okay? That helps because you build that grassroots movement, and you don't have to go to DC to go do it. We love to see y'all up in DC. I've done a lot of that myself. But we've got a grassroots. We all have military skills to get back into the leadership, get back into working buddy to buddy, helping each other, and things that could happen. And right now we're kicking off our sign-on letter on the House. It's a deadline. So when you do that, I'm just going to add, you have to call the DC office on legislation or funding. And we have a deadline for them to sign on. So you need to call, we start with the House. So you need to call your representative. Find other vets in Florida, they're in a different district. Get the word out to them. And Anthony has all the guidance on 91 outcomes. If we don't get the funding, we can't get the answers we need. So it's several steps, like Jimmy has 1, 2, 3. Okay, you do that, then you get the vets into the research. You're going to be working out there as a group of veterans. So you help us get the word out to other veterans to participate. If they're healthy veterans, ill, we need them. The other thing is to get involved with the hospital. See if they have a veterans committee. Bring the issues out. We're having problems with the doctors not knowing anything. We can help problem solve. We've got ideas. We can lay it out.
Sorry, that's great, but that's all the political stuff, and we're supposed to be doing clinical stuff.
The last thing is the clinician knowledge. And that's what I'm saying. Go back to your hospitals, your facilities, see if they have a veterans committee, because you can bring up problem solve.
So we have a lot of problems with systems, and I am here to say that we all need to, and that's great, the idea of having an advocacy group at each individual VA to try to help answer some of the institutional problems. I'm going to say a couple of quick things, okay? First, there's a big difference between a primary care visit where the doctor is limited to 15 minutes of time, and a specialty visit such as we do, where we give every new patient a full hour, and in my case, a full hour follow-up as well. So that's a very big thing. And the healthcare system in this country is moving back to giving complex illnesses more time. And more, Medicare, for instance, has got billing codes and things that let us spend more time with complicated patients, which is wonderful. It's making a difference in the quality of care people are getting, okay? So we've got streaming questions. I'm going to pick up a couple and then we'll get to that microphone. One of the questions asked about what to do if you're a veteran not from 1990-91, but were exposed to toxins in the Middle East in deployment that happened after that time. So I've pumped that to one of y'all.
You have to do the same thing what the Gulf War illness veterans do. You have to go and ask, tell the doctor your symptoms, and go and ask and have ask for referral to specialists that specialize in Gulf War illness. Because as I said, Gulf War illness is more a research term. In our clinic, beside the Gulf War veterans, we see patients with chronic fatigue syndrome, which the name is different, but the symptoms are the same. Usually people have fatigue that is worse with physical or mental activity. The fatigue is not relieved by rest. They have an unrefreshing sleep. They sleep, they wake up, and they don't feel better. They have cognitive problems. They don't remember things. They cannot concentrate on more than one thing. They get easily tired. They have stomach issues, diarrhea, constipation. constipation, heartburn, they may have dizziness, palpitation, they may have rashes. So all those symptoms are symptoms of Gulf War illness, chronic fatigue. So if you're a veteran, you're still a veteran of Gulf War area, ask for referral.
And usually clinic will have specialists in with chronic fatigue syndrome. There is another conditions with autonomic dysfunction, there is another diseases which overlap in symptoms. And in this clinic, we will be able to be diagnosed correctly and importantly got treatment.
There's a specific question about a whole host of integrative or complementary strategies that have been employed, and ask about whether or not it's safe. For instance, a person who goes to see an integrative doctor who wants to use IV glutathione or sauna or this sort of thing. So perhaps you might address, how does a consumer, a veteran, know how far to go down that path and what's considered safe?
I want to start with supplements. Dr. Klimas knows how concerned I am. I recommend obtain supplements from, it's better from local compounded pharmacy when you really can talk with your pharmacist. I never recommend Amazon because it's just marketplace. You don't know what you're actually getting there. And it needs to be prescribed. And usually, if any practitioners recommend you supplements, they will tell you where to obtain it. Sometimes to go for cheaper version is not best way. If you have a clinician with who you establish long-term relationships, and then you went to see someone else and got new recommendation, it's always good to communicate with your providers. Make sure that your primary doctor and your specialist for seeing you for Gulf War illness will agree with another recommendation, because you can be on two not parallel treatments which not supporting each other. It's really difficult to tell, and I will not be able to tell you this is a good treatment or bad treatment, but you have to pull expertise from everyone you see and make sure that the treatment you think beneficial for you, because you see this podcast or see YouTube or some even friend veteran benefit from that. It's not guaranteed that you're gonna benefit from that. And I have to be cautious, and the recommendation needs to be waived with the doctor who sees you more often or knows you well. It's a difficult answer, question.
So I just want to add, so if you don't know how far to go with the treatment, ask the doctor, ask lots of questions, because not everybody can tolerate sauna or certain supplements. So if you're not sure, ask what is the evidence, what is the safety, what are possible side effects, are there any research studies done on these supplements. You can ask those questions, and the provider should be able to answer them for you if they want to use the supplements.
I think the common presentation in Gulf War illness in terms of medication tolerance makes tremendous sense. You all went into a theater and you had a tremendous number of exposures, and you stayed sick. For every one of you, there were 2 people that came home and got pretty much better. The difference is that you were vulnerable because of how fast your body's able to detoxify things it sees, or else you got that hell of a load compared to the next guy, right? So it's all about detoxification. So here you are, fast forward 30 years. It's not like your detoxification system got better, right? I mean, you already had kind of crapped out the detoxification system. So then we start shoving drugs at you, the usual way. When in fact you get toxic reactions like that, because you really build up high levels of things. Your liver's not clearing this stuff, You know, so the lesson learned is go slow and layer, right? If your doctor gives you Pregabalin, Lyrica, the initial dose might be toxic. You might actually need only half that dose to get the same benefit of the next person. When we start putting on nutraceuticals, put one on at a time, make sure you tolerate it before you layer another. Don't take a bucket of nutraceuticals all at one time and they go, man, I'm sick, I'm never going to do that again. Because then you won't give yourself a chance whether or not that'll work. But when you listen to Anthony talking about what helped him the most, just listen to that nice talk he had. I've asked him before, if I could take everything away except 3 things, what would you stay? What would be yours? And not one of them is a pharmaceutical. You know, every single one is a nutraceutical you couldn't pry out of his hands. So that's really interesting. So, bottom line is, let us do this research. Gosh, I would love to be able to prescribe curcumin at the VA. I can't put it on the formulary until I finish that darn study, right? Same thing with the liposomal glutathione. And oh my gosh, CoQ10, that's so obvious. And yet, you know, when I start giving people these, you need to take this, that, and the other, I'm laying on $120 a month of nutraceuticals. And I can tell you the average vet doesn't have $120 for nutraceuticals. Okay, so I'd rather let the federal government pay for it. So you have to participate in your studies. But also, don't think nutraceuticals are not medicine. They really are medicine, sometimes very powerful medicine. So those studies have to happen in addition to the pharmaceutical studies and other things that we're all doing. The next question asked, okay, this is a really important question, but it's got to do with your comp pen applications. How do you get the diagnosis? You can have all these symptoms, you seem to meet the case definition, but some doctor has to give you the diagnosis. And the answer is actually not true. There's no such thing as gall 4 illness as an ICD-9 or 10 code. When you're filling out the forms, you're filling out the chronic fatigue syndrome form, the fibromyalgia form, the bronchitis form, the layer it all on, everything you got form, and then the compilation of that ends up being what CompuPen's dealing with when it's going through. So I'll give you the label. I'm happy to give you the label. Anyone who's been a research study is going to have the label. But what you need to go through the process is a doctor willing to write those other diagnoses down. And honestly, chronic fatigue syndrome is a symptom-based diagnosis. It's kind of an easy diagnosis to make. And the form's right there, they just have to check boxes. Okay? It's a 2-page form. It's not too much to ask them to fill out an arm form.
Just to add to that, when they give them diagnostics, if you can ask them, can you relate that back to my time of service?
Absolutely.
That's
important.
That's very important.
Yeah. Which comes to time of service. There's 2 times when this illness becomes apparent. Many people came home ill and stayed that way. That Anthony told you his personal story, which is like that, right? He was sick, he didn't feel. Some of the studies have restricted people who became ill within a few years of coming home. We sort of made that stuff up, but at least then you know that you're dealing with something that apparently is a consequence of service. Remember what we do for research is to keep the group size clean, and they didn't have some other disease, and we mixed them all up, and now we don't know what's going on. So we have to have a tighter case definition for research than we do for clinical use. However, now there's this second wave of veterans 30 years later starting to come up with one illness after another, and you can't say it wasn't because of their service. We know that people in the Gulf had a hell of a physiologic hit, and on many different layers, they may not have been completely well, but the symptoms didn't become apparent, or the new diagnoses didn't become apparent. Like they take your cancer diagnosis, sir. I'm sorry that happened to you, but we knew from research that the cells that prevent cancer and fight cancer have been in very poor shape from the beginning of time, from the time. And so your risk was there. So there's no reason you shouldn't be able to push that into a consequence of service cap. So anyway, that was the one question.
Hi, I appreciate the insight. Thank you guys for being here. You know, you extreme. I think that a lot of the local issues that these veterans are dealing with and the families are dealing with are nationwide issues. I think that the destiny of your research and whatever answers that promises, it's tied hand in hand with the VA. You guys have a symbiotic relationship. If the veterans don't have trust in the VA processes at the VA, there's no communication at the VA, I don't understand how you guys can hope to get the kind of research pool that you guys are hoping for later on if the veterans are apathetic about the system and they don't want to contribute any more of their time, effort, money, and patience, frankly, at the system. So, I mean, that's not your concern. I think that it's...
No, it is our concern, because the relationship that was poisoned early on when you came back from service and no one believed you. I totally understand why you feel the door slammed in your face. And then we're coming around, 30 years later and saying, we can't really help because we can't find you. But you left for very good reason. So, I just love the person who said, there's the VA and then there's the people in the VA. And if you can separate that out of your head and not perceive that everybody is really trying to help is part of a bad system, therefore you shouldn't participate.
But good individuals exist in bad systems. And ultimately, the results of the system will play out in reality. So
Yeah,
that's,
but I love that Denise thought you could influence the system. I love that. Because I can tell you, the day we started using veteran advocates in our research much more intensely day to day was the day we were more successful as scientists.
and that's kind of the segue into my next question. What kind of efforts have been taken specifically to find research participants? The advocacy program is great because veterans are a community, just like anybody else. They seek each other out for insight, they seek each other out for, they lend each other credibility for things that work, things that don't work. Veterans in particular are, that's kind of how they do business. So the advocacy group is awesome. The social media stuff, I haven't seen much on social media. That's not to say that it doesn't exist. I don't want to say that. But I think that there's social media tools that can be leveraged to help you guys find the populations that you guys are looking for. There's YouTube channels like Veteran TV. There's big podcasts like Joe Rogan. He's had veterans on there, veteran advocates on there. And, I mean, he has millions of viewers per day, 5 million subscribers. There's many social media channels and outlets that I think could be taken advantage of if they were reached out to and given the proper information. Condensed information that's easily digestible. Somebody else had mentioned that, or you mentioned that. Information that these guys can digest in the sitting. They don't have, we have the luxury of sitting here for a couple hours, many people don't. And that's one thing. But then I have a couple of questions for you as well, besides that.
Okay, I would like to get it back to clinical care because this is your opportunity.
100%, yeah. I'll put it back there. So I have questions about the different subsets of GWI, and just could you shed light on the different kinds of subsets that we see?
That's such a good question. So there's different ways to look at subsets. First, men and women are different. Men and women with comorbid something else, different. TBI, PTSD, anxiety disorder, depression, diabetes. Huge number of veterans with Gulf War illness that develop diabetes. So there's that. Or you can go down into a more pathophysiology space and say, can we find biologic signatures that would separate these people out and help us not just separate them, but find new targets for just that group, right? So in there, we're very, very keen on this autoimmune subgroup. There's the brain autoantibodies that Dr. Sullivan and Dr. Abudona have described. We don't know if they are meaningful if they're causing the disease or not, but we know they're there. And so that's why we designed this study to try to treat antibody production as a problem and see if we could get some improvement there. But there's another really important autoimmune disease that's new, that's very prevalent in Gulf War illness, but newly described the understanding of it. It's something called small fiber neuropathy. And small fiber neuropathy is the cause of roughly half of fibromyalgia out there. And it's autoimmune. So the treatment is not pain management. The treatment is immune management. But those early studies to see what kind of immune management are we talking about, they're not done yet. They're just posted, newly posted on clinicaltrials.gov. There's nice case reports, but there's not clean studies done yet on how to treat small fiber neuropathy. Though this B-cell depletion study that we're about to do for brain autoantibody would also approach fibromyalgia autoantibody. So we're going to incorporate the fibro piece into the protocol. So we'll learn something about that. So autoimmune mediated disease. One of the problems with the immune system is it's so screwed up when viruses reactivate. And so then that becomes a targetable treatment. Should we treat these viruses, or at least the broken immune system, or both? That's a common thing. I'd love you guys to address that question. And then the dysautonomia, which is to say the autonomic nervous system, which controls your blood pressure and pulse and your digestion and everything else under the sun. That's a really big piece. And again, that's a lovely question to throw to the panel. I'm trying to throw some clinical questions to the panel. What else would I throw? The other questions I throw to the panel have to do with sleep and how to get more restorative sleep. And finally, we haven't talked about it, pacing. Okay, so why don't you guys grab a couple of those questions and then we'll grab another.
Okay. Hi, Alice Sadler again. I'm a doctoral candidate at Grand Canyon University. And I have everything related to Gulf War illness with the exception I don't have diabetes, I don't have any cancer presentation, although I have a thyroid that's full of tumors that are benign. So my question is, all of this lovely work is for naught if it doesn't have a bridging strategy into the use of it in the VA. And I heard this alluded to earlier. Has there been any, I'm an organizational development practitioner, has there been any strategy presented in the clinical sense to bridge into practice into the VA?
So we're being probably overly traditional in the sense that we're doing these phase 1, 2, and 3 trials, proving it and saying, hey, the evidence says this should not put it on the formulary. So that's one thing. At the VA, there has been a research advisory committee since Andrew and colleagues forced them to do it and then paid attention. But there hasn't been a clinical committee in a very long time, maybe 20 years since the last time a clinical committee met that would help make those bridges happen. So I think it's very important, the question you raised. I don't think it's been appropriately answered. There's nothing I see in the wings that suggests it's being easily done. The Research Advisory Committee sort of took that on because we do public testimony for 3 hours every single time we meet, and this is what they talk about. You know,
Can I get with you offline to document that gap?
I couldn't hear you.
Could I get with you offline to
Sure.
document that gap?
That would be really, really good.
Thank you.
Super.
It's falling over. There we go. It was actually for Denise. The list that you spoke of what we should bring with us when we go to our primary care doctor, is there somewhere that we can get that? That seems like the most comprehensive list I've heard or seen in a few years.
I'm pretty sure these PowerPoints are going to be available afterwards. You'll be able to access all of that information when you review the PowerPoints on the Institute for Neuro-Oncology.
On our webpage.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
I just want to note with regards to clinical care, and it was one of the questions earlier, the Gulf War Illness Research Program has an underutilized funding mechanism. Has had very few applicants since it first initiated 2 years ago, and it's the Patient Provider and Health Communications Award. And I'm just going to read one sentence about what it is intended to do, and that is, is the development and maintenance of strategies to effectively communicate Gulf Wilderness research and clinical recommendations to diverse audiences with the goal of informing and raising awareness and applicants seeking support for these kinds of communication strategies should consider this patient-provider health communications.
That's great, thank you. That's exactly what the integration panel knows where the problems lie. I'd like to take a moment just to do pearls. Let's go down the line and do pearls, okay?
Okay, so I talk about pacing because when you come to us and you say, oh, I'm fatigued, right? And we throw some supplements at you and maybe some more medication, and that's great and that can help you a little bit better, but there's lots of that you can do for yourself. And one of the things that we teach patients is pacing. No matter what the fatigue is coming from, it's just your body, it's a symptom. Your body is telling you that you don't have enough energy, your body cannot produce enough energy for what you want to do. And now you still have all those things that you want to do, but the energy is much smaller. And how are you going to accomplish it? So the pacing is pretty much breaking your things that you do in a small little pieces and taking rest periods in between. And when we say rest periods, we mean laying down in quiet space, meditating, napping, sleeping, not sitting in front of the computer, or not watching TV or browsing on your phone. Because we spend energy in 3 different ways. We spend energy physically, and that's easy for everyone to understand, right? When you exercise, when you do shopping, when you vacuum the home. The second way we spend the energy is mentally. So conversation on the phone, watching TV, reading on the computer, that requires energy, that requires brain energy. And third way we spend energy is an emotional way. And this is stress, PTSD, anxiety. If you have a fight with your neighbor, that will eat up your energy, and then you will have physical symptoms. You will feel more fatigue. So you have to take all that in consideration. And everybody, this is very individual thing because everybody is different. And veterans are the worst because they put in your mind that no matter how you feel, you have to push through, right? And so that's what you guys do, and you don't give yourself a break, right? So you have to change how you think and take breaks in between and let your body rest, because if your body is telling you I need a break, you need to listen to it. Thank you.
I want to follow up that you mentioned that avoid stress, manage stress, recognize stress in work and home, and learn how to manage it. Also, you're helping your clinician if you got observatory skills. You watch what you eat and how you feel after that. You may need to make a note. You may need to make note and bring it next time to practitioner. There is a lot of data and information. We know the chronic illness can contribute to autoimmune disease. The particular food, exposure to food, have a cross-reactivity, and you can have autoimmune reaction. Your immune system will react. Everything where our gut is actually huge exposure to our immune system, where our immune system constantly gets right for chronic low-grade inflammation, and there is a brain-gut axis. It's like highway, and everything what happens in your gut, it corresponds to your brain. You have cognitive brain fog after you eat this piece of pizza. You only one who can recognize it, and then figure out that maybe this big load of carbs made me sick and kind of sleepy this afternoon, and I should address it. So there is a lot to cover. Nutrition is important. What do you eat when you eat? You shouldn't eat before you go to sleep. However, and this is what I'm stressing again, you have to work with practitioner, because some people was questioned earlier about fasting. For some people it may be good. However, patients who complain about feeling unrefreshed in the morning, and particular patient with diabetes or with chronic fatigue syndrome, with low-point illness, sometimes we feel unrefreshed in the morning because we have hypoglycemia in the middle of the night. And for this patient, instead of being on the fasting for 3 days, we need a snack before we go to sleep. So you have to really watch yourself, because we cannot do that. We have you, lucky for us, we have you hour, sometimes 2 hours with us, but we cannot see it. But we need you to bring this information to us, and we can evaluate what does it mean for your health.
Okay, that's cool. Just a couple little, I'm going to do some closing pearls because we've really run time through here. But first, if you have non-restorative sleep and you slept and you wake up exhausted, 100% of those people need a sleep study. And if you haven't had it, doesn't matter, short, fat, long neck, short neck, all the usual stuff your primary care doctor's thinking about, 100% of people who are exhausted despite a night's sleep need a sleep study. You'll be shocked how many positives there are. I went through my chronic fatigue charts. 50% of people were positive that I sent. Oh yeah, and then the other thing is, if you do have a sleep disorder, do the friggin' treatment. Don't come telling me how exhausted you are and you didn't use your CPAP. I'm not going to be listening to that anymore. I'm done with that one. There was a very good study funded by the CDRMP that used CPAP in people without apnea, just upper airway resistance, and they got very nice clinical responses. So just getting oxygen all night long is good for you. It is the time when you're supposed to repair. So sleep matters. Pain management. Morphine and all of its cousins are immune and inflammatory drugs. So pain management without opiates is the ideal situation. It's not always possible, but opiates are not your friend, okay? So finding other strategies, be they alternative like acupuncture. In our clinic, we use a lot of low-dose naltrexone. Naltrexone is a medication that reduces brain inflammation in very low doses. We do a lot of that. But opiates are not your friend, but neither is pain. So coming up with strategies to address your pain that are opiate as free as possible, that's really important. Let's talk about sleep, pain, energy. Energy at the cellular level is broken. That's why there's so many mitochondrial-based studies going on. Why would all of these systems not work? At a level of this individual cell, every cell in your body, your mitochondria need to work and be in balance. That's your energy production space, and you need to have that work. You have 100 to 1,000-fold more mitochondria in a brain cell than in a muscle cell. This place is burning energy and making a lot more oxidative stress than any other place in your body. So you have to pay attention to oxidative stress and mitochondria. And in that world, everything you put in your mouth should make your body feel better, and junk is not your friend, okay? If you're going to be trying to do healing, your food should be healing, and junk is not healing. And there's precious little opportunity, you're messing with me, the precious little opportunity in your day-to-day life to take control of this, but why put crud into this system that doesn't detoxify, that has an abnormal microbiome that's sick, and needs to have just healthier foods and healthier stuff going in. The catch-24 of chronic fatigue syndrome and gall-4 illness is that you don't have much energy, but if you don't do anything, you'll have less energy. Your body deconditions very rapidly. Look at the astronauts. They go up for 6 weeks, they come back with 20-30% reduction in their muscle mass. It's huge, right? You put someone in a hospital bed for a week and they lose 5% of their muscle mass. That's amazing. So you have to do a little something, and the only way to do it is through pacing. So, and don't think that you're going to become a marathon runner. The best way to think of reconditioning in this illness is interval training. 3 minutes at a time, big exercise for 3 minutes, and tiny little break, lay down, let it perfuse some more, get up and do another 3 minutes. But don't go 3, 5, 10, 15, 20, 1 hour, because you can't do that, and it's not going to work. You're going to do much better If you do 2 or 3 3-minute efforts in a day, and then try to work up the number of efforts per day that you do. So deconditioning, reconditioning matters, and you can do it, and you will find your wall, and you will crash, and then you're gonna try to remember where that wall was and don't go to that wall again, but keep trying, okay? So those are my best pearls of the day. Did I lose any? Pearls of the day, okay, we'll call that.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Klimas, and the rest of our panelists. That was some amazing knowledge, and thank you to everyone who asked questions. It really helps us to understand what you need to know and be able to give you the information you need. So thank you again to everyone for coming to our 2020 SHIELD Conference. There are still some people mingling about in the atrium, so if you'd like to do some networking and make some new connections, please just make your way across the campus space between here and the building.